All matters noticed on this agenda in any category may be considered for action as listed. Any item not so noticed may not be considered. Items listed on this agenda may be considered in any order at the discretion of the chairperson. The mission of OCFEC is celebration of Orange County's communities, interests, agriculture, and heritage, with results justifying resources expended. I'm going to go ahead and start the Pledge of Allegiance, and can I ask Michelle to lead us in that?
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Chair Cervantes.
Here.
Vice Chair Meyer.
Here.
Director Bonaris. Director Ruiz. Director Aiken. Director LaBelle.
Here.
Director Pham.
Here.
And Director Rubalcaba Garcia.
Here.
Before we move into closed session, I just want to give everyone a FYI that we're going to be adjusting a few things about how we conduct these meetings. And one of those is that Sandra and I are really working as a team, a leadership team for this board. And so we're going to be tag teaming in and out on various elements of these meetings, of the ceremonial functions at various events. And so just so nobody's surprised by the fact that I'm speaking right now as opposed to Sandra. That's all. Just working as a team. And now, if the public will excuse us, we'll go into our closed session.
Calling the meeting back to order.
The 32nd DAA has the following information to report. During closed session on October 24th, 2019, the board voted to terminate the employment of its CEO, Kathy Kramer. Directors Cervantes, Meyer, Aitken, LaBelle, Rubalcaba Garcia, and Ruiz voted to terminate Ms. Kramer. Directors Bonaris and Pham were not present and did not vote on the matter. The board also voted to appoint Michelle Richards as interim CEO. We did not share this information at the last meeting because it was a personnel matter and the individual employee needed to be informed of the action first. With regard to the closed session that just occurred, the board considered the appointment and employment of the general manager and CEO and has nothing further to report at this time. We will now move on to the CEO's operational announcements and updates. I believe we do have a comment card, but if a member of the public will wait, we'll do the report first and then have the comment. Michelle.
Sorry. Wanted to make sure we were here. Thank you. The OC Fair and Event Center employees kicked off the Big Brothers Big Sisters Workplace Mentoring Program last month. Students from Beckman High School in Tustin will arrive by bus here each month to work with our team, who will serve as workplace mentors. It's a great opportunity for these little brothers and sisters to gain workplace insights and coaching from their big brothers and sisters, our OCFEC staff, and you can see that group photo there. The International Fairs and Expositions Association, that's IFEA, not IAFE, IAFE, honored the 2018 OC Fair. Their cycle runs a little bit different from the other associations, with several pinnacle awards. We received 8 golds, 4 silvers, and 1 bronze, and we look forward to displaying those in the room. Director Rubalcaba Garcia and her husband Mickey, along with Ken Carnes, Joan Hamill, and I, represented the OC Fair and Event Center at the Girl Scouts OC's annual Celebrate Leadership event. The Girl Scouts have been a long-standing community partner with OCFEC, and the work they're doing to develop the young leaders of tomorrow is truly inspiring. With a vision closely aligned with our community mission, there are many opportunities for us to continue working together with Girl Scouts OC. And the woman in the middle is Vicki Shep. She's the current CEO of Girl Scouts. I attended the annual California Fairs Alliance Fall Managers Conference on November 6th in Sacramento. This annual conference by Western Fairs Association and California Fair Services Authority, CFSA, both hosted that event. It was an opportunity to network with other California Fair CEOs and get updates from both WFA and CFSA. I also had the pleasure of meeting Arturo Barajas, the CDFA Deputy Secretary who serves under Karen Ross. He is planning to visit us at the OC Fair this summer, and I will be scheduling a meeting with him and our board members who are planning to attend the WFA convention in January. Speaking of WFA, during the October board meeting, a member of the public asked about a $30,000 check written to the Blue Ribbon Foundation. The Blue Ribbon Foundation is the nonprofit arm of Western Fairs Association. The purpose of the Blue Ribbon Foundation is to support the fair industry through training, educational scholarships, and professional services. And because the OC Fair sponsors the educational content of the convention, the Blue Ribbon Foundation provides the funding for that content, and therefore the sponsorship check is written to the foundation. So I wanted to clarify that. Terry Moore, our communications director, and I joined Costa Mesa City Councilwoman Arliss Reynolds as judges for the Equestrian Center Horse and Rider Halloween Contest right after the last board meeting. Such creativity. We were so impressed with these kids and really happy to be a part of the fun at the EQC. 10 days ago, we welcomed this little girl at Centennial Farm, our newest animal educator. This is our new Holstein calf. Our Holstein cow gave birth to her 10 days ago. She's a beautiful little female. Mother and baby are doing very well. And Omar Sanchez, who is our farm operations supervisor, and his team are doing a great job of taking care of all of our friends at the farm. Believe it or not, the holidays are right around the corner, and this year, in the spirit of celebrating the team, we decided it was time for a fun group photo. So on Friday afternoon, we all gathered in front of Millennium Barn for a little fun. While hoisting the photographer up onto the scissor lift, Nate Rowley from our maintenance team took this group selfie. It was a great team moment, and we all had a blast sharing the fun together. So stay tuned for our holiday card, but we love that. So that concludes my report. I'd now like to turn it over to Ken Carnes for an operational update.
Thank you, Michelle. Just a few items this month. On October 30th, Michelle and I attended the 25th Annual OCBC Economic Forecast Conference. We came away with a lot of valuable information, and once again, Director Rubalcaba Garcia and her team did an amazing job. Thank you. The Fair Development Team has started its weekly meetings. Lots of heavy lifting to do in preparation of the 2020 Annual Fair. In February of 2019, the Board of Directors requested a heads up on any of our RFPs going out. Staff has been working on the tenting and furniture RFP and has also started the Independent Amusement Ride Safety Inspection Services RFP. Additionally, we'll be starting to work on the Sound and Equipment Services RFP. This is for the hangar, Action Sports Arena, and Heritage Stage. The Video Equipment and Production Services RFP, this is for the hangar and grounds and junior livestock area. The Grounds Lighting and Trussing RFP. Along with that, the Entertainment Booking RFP, which will come back to the full Board of Directors for review as requested. And lastly, later in 2020, the Sound Monitoring RFP. And now, a quick PowerPoint on the A4M Skyhawk project. The full time-lapse video that will be added to the lobby video will take a bit of time to put together. So until then, this is a little snapshot into the project. So I think it looks a little bit like that at the end. So we started with our groundbreaking with the board and with the foundation, and that was a fun day back in August. We got to work late August 22nd with the underground work and the foundation and preparing the pedestal and all the rebar. This is the form that created the new pedestal that we hoisted into place. It was quite large. There's the skeleton inside that holds that all together with that rebar. More groundwork. you see that support system that had to go around the form. When you pour that amount of concrete, the pressure on that form is tremendous, and when you vibrate the concrete, so you can see the work that had to go in just to support that form work. That's the bolt anchoring system for the A4M Skyhawk that got remade and installed at the top of the form. We worked around a lot of underground infrastructure, prepared the site, continuing. Here we go in preparation of pouring the waste slab that goes under the interlocking brickwork. We now have a pedestal and an anchoring system in place, and we're starting the ground perimeter work, getting everything ready. We're trucking right along. This is all post-fair. There it is. That's what's holding the airplane in place. The form work is starting on the perimeter work and the half ellipses. I can't say enough about the team and John and all the work he did. So there's the pumper truck. We're pouring the concrete. We're getting it all ready to go. All the underground electrical. Then the fun night of starting down in Santa Ana to move the A4. That was a long fun night. We got there around 8 o'clock, and it was well past midnight when we actually got it off the pedestal. It took a lot to get it off. It had to inch it up millimeter by millimeter. Sorry, eighth of an inch by eighth of an inch. But that was a fun, really a momentous night. A lot of folks, a lot of interest. But it would bind up on that bolt system. So there it is. It's flying again for the first time in a lot of years. We got it onto the flatbed and down the road it came. Jason attached a GoPro to the back end, so we'll have that hopefully as part of the video as it went down the road. Here it is the next morning. We're on site, and this was a long day, long anticipated, and getting it back onto the bolts little by little took a long time, but we finally got it settled into place and released from the crane, which was kind of the earmark of there. It's finally landed. We continued with the site work. We got the interlocking bricks in, all the forms pulled off, the underground lighting in. It's looking tremendous. Starting prep work for the turf. That was the testing of the lighting one night, and it looks pretty good. The turf is finally all finished, and we've got it all cleaned up. There it is, just a couple of days ahead of the ribbon cutting. It is a spectacular site with the sun setting. The night before the ribbon cutting, and it was just a tremendous day. Can't say enough about all the ceremonies that happened, and lots of attention and just a tremendous amount of support from everyone. All these gentlemen flew that aircraft at a time in their career. It was great having them. This was the original committee that originally got the A4 to Santa Ana at the Civic Center. It was great having them there. And then here's our board with others, and the final ribbon cutting. So that was a fun project. And that concludes my report. If there's no questions, I'll turn it over to Doug for some.
Hang tight real quick, Ken. We actually wanted to invite you and Jerry and Jason to join us up here so that we could present you with some certificates of appreciation. The certificates read, Certificate of Recognition. The Board of Directors recognizes and thanks Ken Carnes, Jason Jacobson, and Jerry Eldridge. The certificate is given in gratitude by the board in recognition of your outstanding leadership and coordination of the A4M Skyhawk project at Heroes Hall. Your contribution is an example of the excellent performance that defines the OC Fair and Event Center staff. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Jason,
Can I get a picture,
you
please?
get a
Can we get
picture.
the rest of the board members up?
Yes. Everybody.
2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before we turn it over to Doug, I just wanted to acknowledge Doug. Doug is back. Doug Lobster. Doug is a former vice president and former CEO here at the OC Fair and Event Center, and he graciously agreed to return during the transition and provide executive leadership at the VP level to fill in my old role, and I'm very pleased to have you here and very grateful. Thank you. So,
Thank you. Before Doug starts, for the board members who were not here, this is Doug 1 and I'm
Oh,
Doug
that's right.
2.
And Doug, I want to say, we really appreciate you being here.
We do,
Thank you.
definitely.
Thank you very much. This morning I want to do two things. I'd like to spend some time just giving you some information about the upcoming events for December. And then I want to just share with you, just briefly, some of the things I'm working with Michelle's team on, just to keep you apprised as to what my function is to help Michelle. But before I make some comments regarding the upcoming events, I would like to share you, from my perspective, some comments about the events, the year-round events program. When you think about this organization, 1 month out of the year, we are event producers. We produce a significant regional event here in Orange County. Then 11 months out of the year, we're facility managers. And we are relying as facility managers on many departments to support this effort. As you've heard, for those of you who had a chance to go to the budget study session, you heard Howard refer to the events team, or the events department as the department that never sleeps, because they're part of producing the annual fair, and then they immediately go into the year-round events program. But there are other departments that don't sleep as well. So we're just not handing the keys over to event producers. We're very actively involved with well over 80 individual event producers through the coordination, through the move-in, through the event day, through the move-out, and then there's a team that works on the recaps for billing and event debriefing. So they're very, very busy. An advantage of doing your event or an event on this property is the event producers are sitting talking to event producers, not just facility managers. And I think that really adds value to them being on our property as they produce their special event. There's a lot of work that goes, in addition to what the team is doing, there's a lot of coordination with state and federal laws, the county health department, state fire marshal, and law enforcement. So it's a very busy, active program that goes on 12 months out of the year. I would encourage you, I have a strong bias to behind-the-scenes tours. I believe there's a story out there, not only what the customer sees, but what happens behind the event. And I'm sure if you're interested in doing any behind-the-scenes tours, reach out to Michelle and we'll set those up, because there's some very interesting stories here, not only of the events that we're going to talk about this morning, but some of the events that are coming up in the future. Regarding these events, if you have any specific, or if the public has any specific need for information regarding pricing and hours, that's on our website. That's where you can get the real detail of the event. First one I want to highlight is Fight Club OC. I know Roy Engelbrecht is in the audience, and Roy and his son, Drew, approached us in 2010. For 25 years, he was at the Irvine Marriott with the Battle in the Ballroom. So for him to make a change, running a business for 25 years, and to come here, that was a big undertaking. And that was the year that we were just completing the hangar building. So to get an event like Fight Club OC to be here was special to us, but it was also a big undertaking on the part of Roy. But if you haven't had a chance to go see Fight Club OC, I would highly encourage you to do it. Because when you go in that building, not only the boxing ring, you see the 40-foot screen, instant replay, Roy has the suites in there. It is a spectacular presentation of probably, I was talking to Roy this morning, you might call Fight Club OC the king of the minor leagues of boxing. There's not a venue in the United States that presents boxing at that level like Fight Club OC. Then Centennial Farm is going to have 3 classes this year. It's part of their Make It and Take It program. The first one is going to be gifts from the kitchen, and our OC Fair culinary arts supervisor, Pamela Winuk, is going to be doing that program. She'll show her passion for cooking with the vegetables, and she'll show you how to preserve them. The other one on December 14th is how to make holiday wreaths. And so she'll be doing that as well. Not she, there'll be another team doing that. And then on the 21st of December, it's the holiday terrarium. So you'll have a chance to come down, take some of the products from the farm, and you'll actually be able to build a terrarium that will not only last through Christmas, but will last you into the new year. Another program that's going to be here on the fairgrounds is the Share Ourselves Adopt a Family. This is the 50th year of that program, and donors provide gifts and food to over 1,400 families and children here in Orange County. And there are Costa Mesa and Santa Ana organizations that determine who gets those. We're just the host site for the accumulation of the products, and then they distribute it from here. The last one I just want to call out is Winterfest, 18 days of family fun during the holidays. They have been building that program up over the past several years, and there's entertainment, attractions, food. It's a very family focused, and so that will be here in December and then into the early part of January. Get you to just change it again. Now, I know you know a lot about these programs, but what's interesting about the OC Marketplace, on December 7th, they're going to have the OC Taco Festival. So they will have some of the folks who make tacos here in the region come. The fans will get a chance to vote on the best taco. There'll be Lucha Libre wrestling. There'll be other contests, and so they're going to do something special to tie in with what they're already doing at the marketplace. And of course, Certified Farmers Market here every Thursday. The other 2 items, the other 2 events, Centennial Farm and Heroes Hall, when you think about Centennial Farm and when you think about Heroes Hall, both of those celebrate our heritage. Centennial Farm because of the agricultural roots of the fair industry, education. Heroes Hall, recognizing that there are people who have made the ultimate sacrifice, and this is a special property because it was the Santa Ana Army Air Base. So those 2 parts of our program make a lot of sense on this property. So that concludes that portion. Now I want to just make a couple of comments about what I'm doing with Michelle. I'm here to help Michelle and the team. It's the only reason I'm here, and I'm happy to do it. And it's nice to be back visiting with some folks that I did spend a fair amount of time with. I work with a very talented group of people. Marketing, creative, communications, exhibits, the Tandem Group, creative services. So for me, it's been kind of an interesting journey because I'm on the creative side of the house. Previously, I came from the operations side of the house. So I find myself learning as much as assisting them. But a couple of things I'm doing with that team to help Michelle and the executive office. The things I'm going to share with you, I want to make sure that I don't want to leave an impression that they're not taking place. I want to work closely with them to enhance that part of the process. And that is setting priorities and how we are efficient with what we do. Because one of the challenges is when you have somebody go from a vice president office to the CEO's office, They have things that they've been working on, and they have relationships, and Michelle has a very close relationship with that unit. When I came back to help the board, I had already been out of the building for a year. So I just walked into the CEO's office with a briefcase, different dynamic. So what we're trying to do, myself and those members, we're trying to find out ways how we can set priorities and be more efficient and be respectful of the time that Michelle needs to, as her work is working closely with the board and other strategic initiatives. The other thing we're working on is the identification of the cross-functional relationships. A lot of the work that we do here, it's not done in silos. Some of the work is done in silos, but a lot of the work is cross-functional and how all these departments work. And I think that's going to be very important for Michelle as she continues to build her executive team. The other thing I'll be doing with those areas is to create a document, and it's called Key Focus Areas and Critical Issues. That document might be 1 page long, 2 pages long. It doesn't have a lot of narrative. It doesn't have solutions. It's a recognition by each department. What are the key focus areas? And then what are the critical issues? And then that document obviously will be shared with the executive management team, because at some point in time, Michelle will be backfilling the position that I'm in on an interim basis. And I believe that information from those departments will help whoever that new person is to know what are the key focus areas and critical issues. And no doubt, in the 3 weeks I've been back, I know I work with a professional, talented, dedicated group of people, and I'm happy to be back. That's it.
All right.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate your willingness to come back and help. My experience when I was the chair, I don't know, 1,000 years ago or whatever it was, Doug was an extremely helpful individual, and knowing the expertise he has that he brings back to the organization, I know he's well thought of by the entire organization, and I think we all appreciate your willingness to help. Thank you.
Okay, just very quickly, our financials, 10 months ended October 31st. Our year-to-date revenue currently is unfavorable to budget by $1.46 million. That is mainly due to those 2 PAC-AMP shows that were budgeted but not booked. In addition, there was 1 fewer gun show this year than originally planned. And then for those of you that knew about the Apollo 11 show that was that played in LA, they were booked to come here to OC Fair and Events Center. Unfortunately, the producers were struggling a little bit with the show in LA. They decided to pull back, retool the show, and they do plan to be back, but that left a bit of a deficit for our revenue as well. However, we did close the gap quite a bit by being $1.18 million favorable to budget on the expense side. It still leaves a deficit of $282,000, but with Winterfest coming and some other events coming between now and the end of the year, we'll see that gap close. In terms of cash and cash equivalents, we're in very good shape. Total cash and cash equivalents as of October 31st is $58 million. That's a year-over-year increase of over $7 million, or 14%. Okay. And that concludes our updates.
Thank you for all of that. I do want to say, in addition to the text that we read off of the certificates, how much I enjoyed attending the unveiling and ribbon cutting of the A4M Skyhawk. It was a moment of great pride for everyone in attendance, I believe, and just want to really thank the team for the great work on that. Before we go to the public comments, are there any comments or questions from the board?
There's a CEO update card.
Yes, I've got that here. So then Roy Engelbrecht, please.
Roy Engelbrecht, fight promoter. Thank you, Doug, for those kind words. The only thing that was left out was the slogan that I know Michelle loved 6 times a year to say about Fight Club OC. It's the most fun you could have on a Thursday night in Orange County. Absolutely. 2 weeks from tonight, we finish our 9th year of Fight Club OC shows in the hangar, and it's a special night. About a month ago, Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boy Promotions contacted us, and they needed their Golden Boy Thursday night fights a location, and they said, Roy, could we come to your show and put on the fights, some championship fights, because we have an agreement with DAZN. We agreed immediately because it'll elevate the caliber of shows, but more important, it'll be shown live at 7 o'clock our time on DAZN. DAZN, if you're familiar, is like going to be the Netflix of sports. So at 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 2 weeks from tonight, the world will see Fight Club OC, and we'll see the Hang, and we'll see the Orange County Fair and Events Center. So that is kind of neat for us, and it's a great way to end our 9th year. Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on next to matters of public comment. Public comment is allowed on issues not on the current agenda. However, no debate by the board shall be permitted on such public comments, and no action will be taken on such public comments at this time, as law requires formal public notice prior to any action on a docket item. Speakers are requested to sign in prior to the start of the meeting and are limited to 3 minutes. Comments will be accepted on agenda items during the meeting. Speakers wishing to address the board on items on the agenda are requested to sign in prior to the start of the meeting and identify the agenda item on which you desire to address the board. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. And our first speaker is Reggie Mundicus.
Hi, good morning. I'm Reggie Mundicus. I'm speaking regarding public comment. I just want to thank staff for the great budget meeting we had last week, and also thank the board and staff for the changes to a more open and transparent process, and including the public in more of the process of how this public property is managed and run. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kim Stanford.
She had to leave.
Okay. Next is DeBron West.
My name is DeBron West. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. A little history about myself. I was an Orange County resident for approximately a decade. During this time, I was an Orange County Department of Education employee, a UC Irvine graduate, and my family currently continues to reside in Orange County. Therefore, my personal interest in this fair is dear to my heart. I am one of the owners of Allstate 38 Inc. I believe some of you met my husband and business partner, Adam West, at the budget meeting. For those of you who did not, Allstate 38 is the largest family-owned carnival game provider in the country. Adam presented the board with a plan for the district to increase revenue with its upcoming anticipated RFP for carnival-related operations, one that doesn't require blanket contracts for the Midway, but rather gives your fair the ability to separate the Midway like any other part of the fairgrounds. With the increases in minimum wage and all other expenses on the rise, it's time for government entities to explore options to increase revenue within its current operations. The Carnival Midway is just that place. With a decade-old contract that favors the contractee, it's time for the district to entertain change. The current Midway provider paid the district around $4.1 million in 2019, with arguably the best deal in the outdoor amusement business. Our calculations indicate that the district could split the carnival contract into separate RFPs, Midway rides, digital ticketing, Midway games, and food by separating the carnival contract, similar to what is being done at the San Diego County Fair. The district could possibly increase revenue by more than $2 million per year. Let me explain. Any Carnival Midway company would pay 35% or more to operate the rides at a 10 million plus ride grossing event. For example, in San Diego County, 48% of the ride gross is paid out. Allstate 38 previously made the commitment of a guaranteed 15 million or more for a similar 10-year game contract. With the food gross closing in on its own 1.5 million, the opportunity to generate 400,000 is in reach. We are talking about an additional 20 million over the next 10-year contract compared to the previous outdated Midway contract. As stated by RCS, the most logical and fiscally responsible way to approach an equitable contract is to assess the ride activity and game activity as separate and distinct business activities with different margins, cost of operations, and risk of loss. For this reason, Allstate 38 is requesting that you, the Orange County Fair Board, establish a committee to have public workshops to ensure all operations are entertained and increasing revenue. We hope that fair management drafts separate RFPs and that you, the board, has the opportunity to approve RFPs that would guarantee the district receives fair share of Midway revenue. Allstate 38 is committed to providing the highest quality in Midway game entertainment while sharing the revenue with our fair partners. We look forward to actively participating and using our 3 generations of knowledge to ensure this fair, my previous hometown fair, isn't blindsided. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Thomas Downs.
Good morning. So this is a signed statement with a few signatories. I would like to apologize for a mistake that was made by me personally, because there was a reference to Costa Mesa Fairgrounds rather than OC Fair and Event Center. Dear Costa Mesa Fairground and Events, we who have signed below and who are parents and residents of Costa Mesa, we hereby request that the Crossroads of the West gun show be canceled and not occur as scheduled for the show scheduled November 30th, 2019. Such a large event surely brings much revenue for the fairgrounds and perhaps also for the city of Costa Mesa as a whole. Therefore, we don't make this request lightly. This request is made with the hope that our schools and communities will forever be kept safe from gun violence at whatever scale, large or small. We are aware that a large number of conscientious, law-abiding citizens attend these gun shows. Sadly, this fact is no guarantee that gun violence will not result from a gun purchased at the gun show. Thank you for the due consideration and care you give this formal request.
Thank you. Next is Heather Allen.
Hi, my name's Heather Allen. I came here today to say thank you to everyone here so much for voting to keep the Crossroads of the West Gun Show here in Orange County. As a certified firearms instructor myself, I can say that I send all my clients to the gun show, and I know that they attend because I run into them at the show. I wanted to speak last month here. I actually came to the meeting and speak in favor of the gun show, but unfortunately I had to leave early and teach some lessons that day. I also wanted to come here to voice my extreme disappointment in the one vote against the gun show. Unfortunately, Ms. Aiken isn't here today, but I will tell you why I have such a problem with it. Ms. Aiken ran for mayor of Anaheim. Had she become mayor of Anaheim, she would have had many occasions where she would have been protected by personal armed security. And the kicker is the mayor of Anaheim, they would be protected by firearms that I as a civilian cannot own. They would be protected with firearms that have quote unquote high capacity magazines. As a civilian, I cannot own. So basically, the mayor of Anaheim is protected with firearms that no one at the Orange County Gun Show would be able to buy or sell. Also, the personal armed protection of the mayor of Anaheim is all paid for at the expense of taxpayer money. So I hope she hears this today, because really what I want to reiterate to her is that I would guess 99% of Orange County residents, we cannot afford personal armed security. But what we can do, what is afforded to us through the Second Amendment, is putting our own protection, putting our own safety into our own hands. And as a female, I can tell you how important this is for me, putting my safety into my own hands. When you think about the fact, if you call police, it's going to take 8 to 10 minutes. Sometimes they never respond. That's actually been happening a lot lately. And where is the best place that you can find out about putting your safety into your own hands is the Orange County Gun Show. something he mentioned before, the person before me, I know we all have the best intentions, but he did bring up schools. And I have to point out the fact that 90% of mass shootings happen in quote unquote gun-free zones. So maybe there's something we can all come to agreements on, is keeping schools safe. But again, I just want to say thank you to everyone here. I believe everyone here voted in favor of the gun show. So hopefully I will see you in about 10 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Beth Rafakis.
Good morning. I just wanted to say congratulations on another great Veterans Day event. It was a perfect day, and I know everyone enjoyed being there, and especially seeing the unveiling of the Skyhawk. It was really spectacular, and I want to thank the staff at the fairgrounds, and also Director LaBelle for taking the lead on it when this issue first came up with the Heroes Hall Foundation and everything. I know they did a lot of work on it as well, and I think it's just a great addition to the Heroes Hall, and it is just spectacular. It'll be even better when you get the benches in around the A4 Skyhawk so people can sit down, because it was a little tiring for a lot of people to stand and not have a place to sit there. And the other thing is, I think the decision to put in artificial turf was a good decision. You kind of just made the decision to spend the additional money, and I think it really enhances it so much better than just regular turf. So congratulations. I know this event has grown so much. I attended the first one that was here, and it's just grown year after year. And so I'm looking forward to next year as well. And the only other thing I wanted to bring up is since you have a new regime with the changeover in whoever the new CEO is going to be, I hope that you will resolve the Adam Carlton issue. And I see that his name is shown on the organization chart. It was in the back of the room. So I hope that that needs to resolve to end some of the big issues that were going on here. And once you do that, things will, I think, resolve themselves and get back to normal. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our last public comment is Lisa Sabo.
Good morning. Thank you so much. And Doug, it's good to see you and have you back. And one thing that Doug was saying, how 11 months a year you're facility managers. But I just want to remind you that the Equestrian Center is open 360 days a year, offering a valuable asset to our community. We have hundreds of kids, adults, seniors coming through the Equestrian Center every day, enjoying the horses. And we really love that. And I want to give you a big applause to the entire board and the entire staff for the Skyhawk. That was so impressive watching those pictures. And I would like to ask that the Equestrian Center be added back as a committee in the ad hoc committee. We keep asking for that. Please think of that. Put the Equestrian Center back in there. We had an incredible Halloween day. Thank you, Michelle, for coming and judging our cute little... We've been doing this Halloween day for years, this costume contest, and it was fun because we had some senior homes come out, and we invited several senior homes so they can come and watch it. And only a few seniors came, only a few of the homes participated, but the neat thing was, as they all said, next year we're bringing more people. They, for sure, hands down, absolutely loved it, and realized that the Equestrian Center is truly a community place. The next thing is that we have been doing programs for individual troops in the OC, and just one-on-one, they call and ask me, but Girl Scout troops, and earlier you had a Girl Scout thing up there, and it reminded me to say that currently I have the head of the Girl Scouts of OC coming and saying, can you just provide a horse program or lessons for each Girl Scout troop. So we're working on that with the Equestrian Center. And last week we had a great thing with one of the local 4-H groups also getting them more involved with the horses. And I have a lot of things to say, so I'm quickly going. As you move through the capital improvements and the budgeting, I just want to remind you that the Equestrian Center was built in 1979. It had a 30-year depreciation, so it's been fully depreciated for 10 years, and it needs some large capital improvements. And I hope you have that on the list. The arenas need to be redone. The barns are being worked on and kept up, which is nice, but there's a lot of things on the outside that need improvement. And then the last thing is we have our Changing Strides, which is a nonprofit, and we're fully approved now by the government. We've been doing this Changing Strides for years, where we bring in the at-risk youth of Orange County, but we now finally have our nonprofit going and approved. And our biggest problem is because we're all horse people and we spend most of our time in the barn. We don't spend a lot of time behind the scenes, and we're really in need of some funding to help us finish our website and our ask for funds. And so as you, I know you have some money set aside to give to nonprofits on the fairgrounds property, and I'd like you to consider us Changing Strides to help us grow our program to help the at-risk youth of Orange County. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Just a point of information, when will the benches be installed at the Skyhawk?
They're supposed to be delivered Friday. And today.
No, tomorrow's Friday.
Tomorrow.
Terrific.
It's been a long week. Yeah, they were supposed to be here tomorrow.
Great. All right, we will now move on to item 8, the minutes. I don't see any comment cards, so I think we can go straight to a motion to approve.
So
the
move.
Minutes. For a second,
I second.
roll call the vote.
Chair Cervantes,
Yes.
Vice Chair Meyer,
Yes.
Director LaBelle,
Yes.
Director Pham,
Abstain.
Director Rubalcaba Garcia. Yes.
Thank you. Next is consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are operational matters about which the board has governing policies, implementation of which is delegated to the CEO. They will be enacted in one motion. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the board of directors votes on the motion, unless members of the board, staff, or public request specific items to be discussed separately and/or removed from this section. Any member of the public who wishes to discuss consent calendar items should notify the chair of the board at the time requested and be recognized by invitation of the chair to address the consent calendar, I assume, to address the board. Before we move to the public comment, I see the card. Michelle, were there any items on here that you wanted to pull?
Yes, I'd like to pull item F, the CDFA correspondence.
Okay. And I would like to pull the one second. Under amendments, SA 255-19YR. And I will pause and see if any board members are wishing to pull items. Okay, then I will call on Reggie Mundicus.
Hi, I'm Reggie Mundicus. I'm speaking to 2 contracts on the consent calendar. The 2 contracts that I'm concerned with are the contracts with Morley and Haney and Company. Both of these contracts have been a constant drain on public resources for investigations which were personally motivated, and it's time to end these investigations. It's also time to publicly release the documents that were generated by these companies and the results of these investigations. We're not sure why these were started or why they're being done, but it's time for them to end. Thank you.
Thank you, Reggie. My question is about actually both the Morley Group contract and also SA 26619YR, Haney and Company. The only questions I have on those is whether those went before the audit committee for review. And if not, if we can table them and ask the audit committee to take a look at those.
I don't know the answer about whether they went before the audit committee.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
The Haney contract amendment and the Morley contract amendment. I don't know the committee,
We have not
No.
seen them, no.
so just would be my ask that we table those until the audit committee has a chance.
Okay.
And I don't think I heard any other contract numbers be pulled, except for Michelle, did you want to?
I do. It's
Explain.
really just a matter of information. I want to explain what the State Rules Advisory Committee is. That was a letter that was sent to staff and the Board of Directors from CDFA. The State Rules Advisory Committee is, it's responsible for establishing an oversight of the rules that govern entries into the fair. The items that are judged, the public items that are judged during the fair. And so there's a committee from across the fair industry that helps advise the state on those rules. And CDFA is looking for new committee members. The committee is appointed by the Fairs and Expositions branch chief, and applications are currently being sought for 2- and 4-year terms. To be qualified as a committee member, you must have knowledge of fairs, the agricultural industry, and competitive exhibit programs. And we can think of no better person on staff to represent us on this committee than our agricultural education supervisor, Evie Young. So we're going to submit her application to serve on this state committee. And I do want to note it's a non-compensated committee appointment. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Michelle, what is the, if the appointment is made, what is the time commitment? Is it a monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, on-call? What's the time commitment?
I know that it's typically phone calls, and I believe that they call on a monthly basis. Let me see if it outlines this in the letter. I'm not immediately seeing it. Committee's responsibility includes reviewing and recommending adoption of the state rules to CDFA and F&E on an annual basis. So whether it's a series of calls leading up to that, but they serve on a 2-year term. So not a large time commitment at all.
I think it's a good idea to have representation from Orange County. I mean, we are definitely a different part of the state, and it'll be good for them to, us to have a voice there, so I fully support that.
I would agree with Natalie. It's better to be involved in the process than outside the process,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
I think
very
that's good.
And also Evie is just a perfect person.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. That's it.
Very good, then we would entertain a motion from the board to approve the consent calendar with the exception of the 2 items that are being referred to the audit committee.
So move.
A second.
Roll call the vote, please.
Chair Cervantes,
Yes.
Vice Chair Meyer,
Yes.
Director LaBelle,
Yes.
Director Pham,
I'm staying, I wasn't here for.
and Director Rubalcaba Garcia.
Yes.
We approve the consent calendar other than 2 items that are referred to the audit committee.
Oh, okay, okay. Can we do a revote then, or?
You can-
Director Pham.
Approved.
Okay, making sure we're moving along here. Okay, so we are now on to governance process, and we will start with our committee reports. To assure compliance with the Bagley-Keene Act, committee reports are only for the purpose of the committee chair, ad hoc committee members, or liaison to provide a verbal update. Should the board want to discuss any committee work item not already on the agenda, those would need to be agendized for a future board meeting. And before we actually get into the substantive reports, on behalf of Chair Cervantes, I just wanted to provide a few updates about modifications that have been made to the committee titles and compositions. The first one you'll see on there is a community engagement committee, and for folks who attended the budget workshop, they will understand what that is, and that's a modification that we're making to the process for approving community sponsorships. Rather than having those be approved in bulk buried in the budget, what is being proposed in the budget is that a bucket of money be approved for community sponsorships, which will then be reviewed by this committee, which will be comprised of Director Rubalcaba Garcia and Director Ruiz, as well as representatives from staff. And on a periodic basis, they will be reviewing those. We expect those to be quarterly reviews conducted in public session. So that's community engagement. With regard to the Facilities Committee, this is one that was retitled and consolidating several committees that were all listed on here, but all really fall within the scope of a Facilities Committee. So we would expect this, which is chaired by Director Aitken, and also Director Rubalcaba Garcia is a member of it, would encompass the committee that existed for the master site plan review, as well as the ad hoc facilities and buildings and grounds, or whatever the name of that committee previously was, as well as the Equestrian Center will be encompassed within the jurisdiction of that committee. And I believe that's, oh, and then the last change is just a change in name. The Audit Committee's name is being expanded to Audit and Compliance Committee. The reason for that being that the review that is conducted by the Audit Office from CDFA is not only a financial audit of the financial statements, but also a compliance review of the organization's compliance with law. And so just to make clear what the scope of that committee's jurisdiction is, we expanded the name. With all of that said, I will start with a report. I assume in community engagement, which has not yet had an opportunity to meet, has nothing additional to state, but Natalie, I'll defer if you want to add anything to that. Okay. Then I will turn it to Director LaBelle for the Heroes Hall Board report.
Yes, very briefly, Ken did a very good job of summarizing the A4 Skyhawk event. It was a tremendous event held on November 9th. In addition to that, I would just, on behalf of the foundation, note that the foundation was a partner in the process. We paid for the plaques, the foundation paid for the plaques. And also on that date, there was the induction of Captain Thomas Clark, who is a Orange County resident and attorney, who was flew 369 missions in Vietnam between 68 and 69, 26 air medals, and the recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross. So he was honored into the Heroes Hall Walk of Honor. The foundation presented to Tom, Captain Clark, a replica model of the F-4 Phantom jet that he actually flew in Vietnam. It was an identical model, had the markings of the plane that he flew. It was a really tremendous. He told me afterwards, he said it almost brought me to tears, so he was very taken back by it. And President Berardino, the foundation president, is back in town, I think, today, and I would anticipate he will be calling a meeting of the foundation sometime in the near future. And Sandra, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, you're good. You said it all. Thank you.
Excellent. I understand that Michelle has an update on behalf of the Centennial Farm Foundation.
I do. I was not able to go, but staff did. Joan and Evie, they provided me with a quick report. The foundation's poker tournament made a little bit of money, about $500, so that added to the foundation. And currently, they are working on grant development and have 8 grant proposals out for consideration right now for a combined total of over $300,000. So they should be hearing back between now and the end of the year, and hopefully Centennial Farm will be a recipient of a few of those as well. Their next meeting is January 16th at 3:30.
Very good. Director Pham, can we defer your committee report to the discussion of the budget, or do you have additional items?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I understand there's no report from legislative monitoring. On behalf of the governance committee, I have nothing additional to report other than what was included in our memo, which is in the packet. But I do really encourage the public to attend the public workshop that we've scheduled for January 9th to look at the first set of policies. And we expect that this will be formatted similarly to how the budget workshop was formatted, and are very eager to have public participation in that. Director Rubalcaba Garcia, do you have a report for the Audit and Compliance Committee?
So the Audit and Compliance Committee has met a couple of times with Ken, and I'm going to defer to Ken because he can speak more.
Sorry.
No, audit.
Oh, audit, over audit.
Or did I
I
go
looked
out
at financials, or facilities
Oh, I
committee was
went out of
before
order. I'm
audit.
sorry.
Sorry. So I will go ahead and go on to audit. So I'm happy to report on behalf of the Audit and Compliance Committee that we have received a final audit for 2017. So we are now working on getting the 2018 audit closed. So we will review that and report back next month as soon as we can get more information on that. And we actually have an action item based on feedback that we've already received from our auditor that I will expand on later on in the meeting. Anything to add, Doug?
Perfect. And sorry for going out of order. I
No,
jumped
it's
to
okay.
Facilities Committee. So back to facilities and Ken.
I will defer to Ken.
Sure, thanks. We did provide just some background updates on what we've been doing to the committee. First, related to infrastructure, CCA has got their contract with EMG and have set the date for an infrastructure kickoff meeting. So that was communicated to the committee. That meeting is going to be November 26th. Get that going. We provided the committee the final draft of the 2020 major capital and projects budget for their review, input, and questions. Also there was a couple of documents that I was unsure if they were ever provided in the past from CDFA, and one was an information item on shelter assessments that may happen in the future, and one on inspection. So that information was provided to the committee.
Thank you.
Very good. For the branding project ad hoc committee, I will turn that to Michelle, except to comment that Director Aitken and I had a lengthy meeting with Michelle to review some of the initial work product, and we provided extensive feedback. And other than that, I'll defer to you, Michelle, on the report.
So IMW, the agency that we're working with on the project, completed the last of 5 focus groups on Tuesday. We received just this morning, in fact, the executive summary from those focus group meetings. So this was the first opportunity for focus groups to see some initial creative direction. So I will be meeting with the committee again to review the feedback from those focus groups, and we'll bring that back most likely for the December board meeting for the full board to be looped in on that.
And this is a project we expect to read in several iterations,
Yes.
right? So we'll be bringing a piece of it at the December meeting
Yeah.
for discussion and input, and
Yep.
really stagger the process out, right?
Yeah, there's several decision points along the line, so each time one of those decision points comes up and we've got that public feedback from the focus groups, we'll bring that back to the full board.
Great. And Director LaBelle, do you have an update from the Storage, Parking, and Traffic Committee?
Ken has provided to Director Bonaris and I kind of a summary of where we're at. I'll just defer to Ken if he could summarize that for us.
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Doug. The update that we provided was just some initiatives that have started or are continuing. We're doing an internal review of the impact of relocating staff during fair time to a parking at a remote location if we find one. That would include all the OCFEC staff, volunteers, RCF, Spectra. There's a lot of moving parts to that, so we're doing an internal review if something comes to fruition. We are putting together a package in preparation of our meetings in Sacramento, an information packages of 2 properties that are top of mind for us, the Fairview Hospital and the Reserve Base. We are reaching out to the City of Tustin, the property manager there, for the possible rent of 2 areas for storage for Carnival. The banning lot that we had last year for Carnival storage just received a $45 million donation. It's protected lands, and there's some rules that we work within. We anticipate that may change as a result of that donation. So we're going to work on the assumption that that will no longer be available to us. So we're re-engaging with some opportunities in Tustin. We'll see where that leads. We're reaching out to Newport Mesa Unified School District leadership to discuss opportunities. There's some discussions of school date opening changes which will impact us. There are 2 public schools on our radar that we want to discuss with them. And we are contacting OCTA to renew discussions on parking and transit.
I have a couple of things. So just a couple of things to add on the audit front, which I failed to mention. Now that the 2017 audit is final, it is now public. So we have posted the complete audit as well as the management report. So just wanted to make sure that I highlighted that part. And then back to the community engagement element. So that was a topic that came up a little bit at our budget meeting last Thursday. And we're excited to talk to the public and hear your feedback on which sponsorships the fair should really entertain and fund. So it was good to hear from Changing Strides today and others, but we do encourage you to spread the word so that other nonprofits can come and present to the committee. So we haven't really established what those guidelines will look like, but we are definitely open to your feedback for this process.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before we go to the public speaker? I have one other quick thing to mention about the governance committee process, and that's my personal commitment that we will get the materials for that public workshop published at least 2 weeks, and I'm hoping we'll get it done with 3 weeks in advance of the meeting so that there's ample opportunity to review and study those before the meeting. And now I have a card from Reggie Mundicus.
Hi, I'm Reggie Mundicus. I'm speaking to the committee and ad hoc committee and liaison report. So I'd like to thank you because we're moving in the right direction with public engagement and trying to find a better way of doing some things, such as the Community Engagement Committee. I like what was posted for the governance manual work, and I like that we're moving speedily through the audit reports, and we're closing out 2017, getting ready to deal with the 2018 audit, and maybe we'll even get through that before they come in and do the 2019 audit. So we're making a lot of progress, and that's very refreshing and will be a benefit both to the community and to this facility and to the board. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that should wrap committee reports, and so we now move on to item E, which is consideration of and vote on the 2020 operating budget. If I may, Michelle, I'd like to start by providing Director Pham the opportunity to comment on that.
Yeah, sure. We had a open budget meeting in the evening. Really appreciative of all the staff that came out. I know Howard had commented it was well past his bedtime by the time we ended it. But at least he got to speak to all the positive portions of it, like revenue. I thought it was really useful for us, especially to hear from everyone. You get the more granular level of detail from each division, manager and budget holder. A lot of times we see just a quick overview, and there's a monthly meeting, a corresponding to ask questions here and there that last anywhere between a half an hour to an hour. But to have a dedicated, long meeting and give us the opportunity, and as well as the community the opportunity to hear more from each individual that's responsible for each portion of the budget was really appreciated. We asked for a few things, and it looks like it's here. The detail of the CapEx, and it looks like some of the reports are more robust and built out as well. I also will say though that we are by no means obligated to vote the budget in at this point. So if you have questions and are not comfortable at this point, it's fine as well. That's it. I'll turn it over to Michelle to speak.
If I may add, so just to sort of set the table for those who were not in attendance, Director Pham did a fantastic job organizing and working with staff to make sure that we had enough information to really vote on a budget at some point, whether it's today or at the next meeting. But so the meeting went from about 6:30 p.m., and Reggie was here for the entire meeting, 6:30 p.m. until about 10:45. It's way past my bedtime. I need as much beauty sleep as I can get. So it was, but it was extremely informative. The table was surrounded by staff members who are overseeing all of these budgets. So we got to hear detail that we had never heard before, which is very useful from a board's perspective because we can make informed decisions on things that are impacting this fairgrounds. which is important to the public because it is a state agency. So I encourage you, for those members of the public who are unable to attend, to take a look at the video, because the time and effort that staff and the board put into that entire exercise was, I think, one of the most useful things that I've experienced during my time on this board, which Vice Chair Meyer just reminded me is about a year in next month. So I just have to say it was a good experience, and we're happy to answer any questions, and Director Pham did a great job with the follow-up as well, so thank you.
Great. And with regard to the process, before we turn it over to Michelle, I do think that we'll probably defer it until December so that we've got as much representation from the board here as possible, and everyone has the opportunity to study it as much as they need to.
Right. Okay, so we're not going to repeat the 4 hours, right? However, staff is in the audience behind me. Raise your hand, guys. They're here. So as we move along, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to stop. We'll assume that everybody has had an opportunity to access materials from the website and maybe even looked at the video as well. A lot of work went into that. So if the board, any members would like to dive into a little more detail as we go along, please don't hesitate to let me know. You have in front of you several documents, and the public has copies as well. There is a draft copy of every department worksheet, and per the committee's suggestion, we've added the budget holder's name to it, so you can put the name with the department. We've also given you a ticket price speculation sheet, and that will be helpful if the board wishes to consider any type of any increases in either the gate price or parking as well.
Michelle, can you, for the members of the public that weren't here and board members, can you expand on some of the reasons why we might have to generate additional revenue related to expenses in wage increases that are required?
Absolutely. In fact, I'll go into those slides, so I'll be talking about that in detail. The budget versus 2020 budget versus forecast, the department P&L snapshot. Again, we added names to the department so you know who the budget holder is. And then much more detail has been added to the capital projects list and major projects list, explaining what those projects are all about. So as we move through this, you can refer to those materials, okay? This is only the second time that we'll be running through this, but it certainly doesn't have to be the last time. Staff is very committed to doing what we need to do to make sure that the board is comfortable with the budget and all questions are answered. So they're here and prepared as we go along. Just as a refresher, regarding the budget process, our fiscal year runs January through December, and budgets are created annually for each department and then consolidated into an organization-wide budget. We have 56 departmental budgets, and they are directly overseen by 18 members of our leadership team. We will be reviewing this budget on a monthly basis through variance reports, and then at least 1 or 2 mid-year reviews so that each department will be monitoring their budget very, very closely. I do want to revisit something we talked about at the budget study session because I think it's important as we move into the 2020 budget. We discovered some technical glitches that affected the budget roll-up in several areas from 2019. For example, we found that there were entire months of expenses in some departments that were missing from the roll-up. So as a result, we reviewed last year's data with an eye to the future and decided the best thing to do would be to build the 2020 budget from the ground up. We didn't just assume that last year's data was correct. So comparing the 2020 budget to the 2019 budget is not the most meaningful way. So where we could, we're doing comparisons between the 2020 proposed budget and the 2019 actuals. We feel that's a more accurate picture. obviously, that will all true up by the end of the year, and we'll be able to see exactly where those issues were. It's not altogether a negative, because it certainly forced everyone to take a really hard look and develop realistic revenue forecasts and evaluate their expenses, starting with zero. And sometimes it's just best to start fresh and move on. I do want to take a minute to review some assumptions that went into the budget. As Ken mentioned earlier, staff has attended a few economic forecast conferences recently, 2 of them put on by OCBC we found to be extremely helpful. They certainly confirmed what we had been studying as well. Mainly, we have one of the longest and most successful expansions in U.S. economic history right now. But that expansion is aging, and there are many indicators that growth is slowing. In addition to that, we're expecting some headwinds that might affect consumer confidence. For example, the continuing trade wars, sluggish global growth, the geopolitical risks, where 2020 is a presidential election year. There is fading fiscal stimulus, and essentially the baseline scenario from some of Orange County's top economists is that while we're flirting with recession over the next 12 to 18 months, the U.S. economy will manage to escape it, but just barely. So what does that mean to us as a business that relies heavily on expendable income? There are fears of recession out there. And even though the economists can say, we're probably going to escape it, just the fear of a recession can spark a recession. And so we have chosen to take a very conservative approach with this budget. We have conservatively forecasted revenue, and we've really pulled back on expenses so that we can deliver the best outcome with this budget. We love this quote from Walt Disney. I've heard there's going to be a recession. I've decided not to participate. And that might be fine for Walt, but we're going to be a little more careful with this budget. This budget is all about labor. Our total labor for 2020 comes in at 20.5, almost $20.6 million. A lot of that has to do with the minimum wage impact. The minimum wage goes up $1 starting in January, and with a workforce that we have that is heavily dependent on minimum wage jobs, for example, during the fair, that's going to hit us hard. There are increased contributions that are required into PERS. We have not budgeted for any new civil service headcount. We're going to hold that the same as we have. And in fact, many departments have found some very good staffing efficiencies. So we'll be using less hours and less headcount to do the same amount of work as before. Our year-over-year variance in labor alone is over $1.87 million. And I would like everyone to keep that in mind as we move through the budget, because that's going to have a big, big outcome on our bottom line net proceeds. 2 additional liabilities that are affecting our budget. We've talked in this room a lot about GASB 68. That is a pension liability requirement that we have to book that liability. And in the past, we've booked $900,000 per year, but now we've got a couple of years of actuals, and we've been able to take that down to $600,000. So that had a positive effect. But there's something new looming on the horizon, and that's SB 84. This is a supplement payment obligation. Essentially, SB 84 was signed by the governor in July of 2017, so we're going back quite a ways. This bill authorized the transfer of up to $6 billion from the state surplus money investment fund as a cash loan, the proceeds of which would supplement the state's employer contributions into PERS for that 2017-2018 fiscal year. It's time to pay it back. So that $6 billion has to be paid back. The District Ag Association's portion of that has been assessed at $9.9 million, to be paid back over 5 years, beginning with the state's 2020, 2021 fiscal year, which begins July 1st. However, we do not know yet what the 32nd DAA's portion of that $9.9 million will be, or whether that first payment will even be due between July 1st and the end of the year. As such, CDFA is recommending that the first payback amount not be included in the 2020 budget, and if necessary, we would come back to the board with that information. There's just, they have no information at all about when we might even hear about that. So that was information I received at the conference I went to at the beginning of the month.
Quick question, Michelle, on the GASB 68 pension liability. When you say we've had 2 years of actuals, that means contributions, cash that's gone out the door to retirees, or what's that mean?
No, that's just meant an assessment of the liability. So originally, if all of our employees retired, that were eligible, retired at the same time, our pension liability would be $900,000. That's not likely to happen, so it's closer to $600,000.
So this is just a reserve on the balance sheet?
It's just a booking on the balance sheet. Exactly.
Michelle, isn't there a shortfall in terms of under PERS pension liability? The number of 15 million rings a bell to me, and I know a lot of cities and other agencies are going through this now.
Yeah.
So how was the 600 arrived at?
I'm going to defer to Elaine on that. Yes, there she is.
Yes, we get an allocation.
Could you come to the podium, please, Elaine? Just so we get it into the record.
Every year we get an annual allocation provided by CDFA. So they take the calculation for their portion of this liability, and then they give us an allocation to report on our specific financials. And we have not received the allocation for 2019 as of yet. That's expected probably within a few weeks from now.
So how does that relate to the unfunded liability of 15 million?
I'm not quite sure. I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
Is this
I don't know
incremental each year? Meaning, is it every year we're putting aside another 600?
Correct. That's correct.
And maybe it's that over that period of time adds up to the 15?
I don't believe so. I
that
think
not
it's
how it
just,
is?
it's on the balance sheet as a liability. I think year over year, it's been 900 for the last couple of years or so.
But if
a
it's
year
hitting
and
the
a half.
budget every year,
It doesn't hit the expense side. It's held on the balance sheet. It was expensed when it was recorded, probably. But as of right now, it just hangs out there. And in
This is
fact,
a
since it was
problem that
reduced from
all-
900 to 6,
All agencies under PERS are facing is the unfunded
Right.
liability.
so is this, the 600 versus 900, is that a balance sheet adjustment then?
When GASB 68 was, first came on the horizon, we were assessed at 900, and it was a number that was given to us from CDFA that included pension liability across the board. If all of our employees were to retire at the same time, that would be our liability. But in the 2 years since GASB 68, that allocation has been closer to 600,000. So we've just adjusted that posting.
so to elaborate on that, since it was reduced from 900 to 600, I would expect there to be some sort of offset gain on that.
It's actually just an estimated number, and so the offset would be in the pension liability dollars that are reflected on our balance sheet as a liability.
Right, but when the balance sheet, when the 900 gets reduced, where does the offset come from?
Just on the asset?
It's on as a liability to the pension liability on our balance sheet.
But if liability decreases, either cash has to increase or, some sort of offset through the income.
What's it
statement.
reserved against, I guess?
It's just a booked number. GASB 68 requires that we book it.
But do we reserve against cash?
Well, you reserve it against employee, it's per employee. I mean, because we had an audit issue based on GASB 68, where,
I remember, but didn't understand.
yeah, certain every employee's allocation goes into GAP, so there's like accounting issues. But I'm hearing what you're saying is it'll go into that reserve bucket for future use.
Yes.
It won't come, we won't see the gains in our annual operating budget because it's already in that GASB 68 bucket. So it could, next year, our liability could be less, right? So we can,
Yes.
because of
Yes.
the 200 or 300,000 that we
Yes.
have.
Yeah, so as our liability goes up and down, that's the adjustment that we're reflecting on the P and L.
Right, you'll
Yeah,
see
the P&L,
that
that's what I was-
300,000
I was
reflected.
implying it's adjusted on P&L.
Okay.
Okay? Good?
Sorry for going down a rabbit hole.
No, that's
It's a
fine.
good question because
It
it's
is good.
confusing.
Yeah. Our budget is reflecting slight increases in our facility rental rates year-round and also the space rates that we charge our merchants during the fair. Most for year-round events are increasing $25 to $75 per day per space, and then merchant fees increasing on an average of $25 to $75 for the entire run of fair, not per day. We always like to show a comparison of our other two fairs in the Southern California area. As a comparison, we use our Costa Mesa building, which is 36,000 square feet. The closest comparison at Fairplex at the LA County Fair is their buildings 6 and 7, which are 33,600 square feet. And then the Wyland and Crosby buildings at the San Diego County Fair, Del Mar Fairgrounds, which are just over 30,000 square feet. You can see the per square foot rate on each. We come in the lowest. I do want to mention in Del Mar, you can see that our rate, per day rate for those buildings is well below LA. San Diego is slightly lower than we are on that comparison, but it should be noted that San Diego has a 2-day minimum rental requirement. So you can't just rent it for 1 day. Even if you just have a 1-day event, you're paying for 2 days. Okay?
How are we performing gross-wise compared to the other two? Do you know?
I don't know
Like,
that.
are we getting a competitive advantage by our lower rate?
I think it's more a competitive advantage in this Orange County market. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So this analysis helps us evaluate our rental pricing within the local marketplace to make sure that that we keep up with the market, but we always want to maintain our position as a community asset as well. Okay. This a little bit more detail. Our buildings and meeting rooms, we're proposing between $25 and $75 per day increase. The grounds, for example, if someone rented Country Meadows or the Plaza Stage area, that would be averaging about $50 per day increase. And then in keeping with the minimum wage increase, our personnel that work those events, we're increasing that by $1 as well. So the total increased revenue on those rental increases for year-round event rentals and then the merchant space during the fair is a little over $86,000. It's about a 2.63% increase. I should mention too that these rates are part of a 3-year rental rate plan that we brought before the board. This is year 2 of that 3-year plan. Okay? So these rates are not new to the board. Our merchant rate increases, and these are for the merchants that sell products during the fair. You can see the modest increases that are being proposed for 2020. Entirely dependent on the location of the space and the size of the space. So those would increase between, I think on the low end, $25 and on the high end, $175 per space for the entire run of the fair. Okay. The budget does not include an admission gate increase, nor a parking increase, but we wanted to let the board know what our current rates are. So parking for year-round events is $9. We charge $10 during the fair. Fair admission on weekdays is currently $12, $14 on weekends, and $7 for kids and seniors.
Quick question on that, Michelle, if I could. With respect to the facility rentals and the parking, the bucket of money that the Community Engagement Committee is going to be looking to distribute, I'm assuming that's just cash sponsorships?
It is.
How do nonprofits apply for, and what's the process for receiving discounted rates on facility rentals or parking?
Great question. That's our Community Connections program. Nonprofits and qualified community groups can apply. We have an application that can be downloaded from the website, and that is for unused space that we have, mainly meeting rooms or small space. In fact, there's an ongoing group that uses this room twice a month for their meetings. They do reimburse us for any hard costs such as staffing that they need or equipment that they need, but we provide the facility, we waive the facility rental for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Year-round parking, just as a comparison to not only the LA County Fair and the San Diego County Fair, but other attractions in the area. Currently, we are at $9 for general parking, $10 for premium or preferred parking, and then you can see how it goes up from there. LA is at 15, San Diego at 15, the Anaheim Convention Center is at 18, Long Beach 15, Honda Center is at 16, and Angel Stadium at 10. So that gives you a good comparison of other area parking rates.
UCLA is at $30,
Oh, wow.
I might add, from personal experience.
Wow. Wow.
That's cheap, Doug.
Yeah.
See, for concerts, it's 50.
Wow. For parking? That's crazy. Yeah. Yep. We have, once again, included in our budget for 2020, employee travel for conferences and conventions that are both fair-related and then also applied to different technical areas for our employees, training and learning opportunities, and then survey trips to other WFA fairs. All travel is in compliance with California state law, so of course we won't be sending any employees to any of the states that are on the banned list. We did make some cuts this year. It saved a little bit, so we're not spending quite as much on travel this year as we did in 2019, despite the fact that everything's gone up, airfare, hotel, etc. Okay. And this is a list of the different conferences, conventions, and training opportunities that we'd like to propose.
Michelle, can we get a list of the banned states?
Yes.
Just for, I know a couple of them off the top of my head, but I'm not sure of what all of them are, so we get to
10?
10. There's currently 10.
There's 10. Let me talk about the bucket. I call it the bucket because, I don't know, it's kind of a good word, right? We're proposing this year, because there has been much discussion in this room recently regarding OC Fair and Event Center's cash support of certain organizations, and we want to assure the board and the public that we understand and we've developed this solution moving forward. We believe that it's in the organization's best interest to sponsor certain events, buy tables at certain events that are organizations that are closely aligned with our mission and our values as well. So this doesn't include those established programs like the Community Connections, where we waive rental fees, or our OC Fair Kids Club during the fair, where we bring kids to the fair who otherwise wouldn't be able to come, or, for example, the workplace mentoring program through Big Brothers Big Sisters. This would be for nonprofit and community organizations that come to us and say, we're having a fundraiser, we'd like the OC Fair and Event Center to be a sponsor of that event. We believe that we have everything to gain by having a panel, cross-functional panel of employees, and now 2 board members from that committee to look at those opportunities and evaluate, is this an organization that aligns with our values? So this is not, I know it looks like a bucket of cash, but it's not cash. This is not writing a check to an organization. It's saying, we will sponsor your event. We will buy a table at your event. Because in doing so, the state actually gets something in return for that as well, through sponsorship, promotional consideration for tables at events that, that's something that board members can attend and staff to support that organization. So as soon as we can get a meeting together with that newly formed committee, that's what we'd like to propose, is how that money would be spent. We don't believe that 1 or 2 people should be making those decisions, but rather that should be a collective decision. So we have built into the budget that $150,000 bucket. Right?
Michelle, one quick question on
Yes.
that. I noticed that you mentioned tickets to fundraising events. Given that we're envisioning this being a quarterly public session
Yes.
Meeting, I'm hopeful that we're going to still leave a little bit of flexibility for events that may come up with only a few weeks' notice, that you decide you want to have fair representatives attend because it's good for our visibility.
Yeah.
That you can still just buy tickets to events as part of marketing or whatever.
Right, exactly. And that's gonna come up because sometimes we don't get 3 months
Right.
advance notice, but,
And that'd be de minimis. I mean, we're not talking
Right.
the big thousands of dollars of
No.
sponsorships, but if it's something like you want 2 people to go attend an event and it's $100 a ticket, you have
exactly.
discretion on that.
Exactly, yep. This was the part of the presentation where we started going through each worksheet, each department, budget holder by budget holder. Happy to do that, but I know that board members have accessed that information, hopefully done a little bit of study. So I'll look to the board about how you would maybe like us to flow through that. Staff is ready to answer any specific questions.
Michelle, maybe you could kind of hit the summary at the beginning of the packet that kind of tells total revenues, total expenses, and hit on what are significant changes. That would be at least
Sure.
a way that I think we could proceed.
I'm gonna, Summer, can you then scoot to the end rather than, should I just click through?
Yeah,
Okay, click, click, click. Lots of detail, lots of labor.
While she does that, I actually would make a correction. I just took a look at the financials on the GASB 68 thing. 600,000 actually is being expensed for the year. I thought it was a reduction in the reserve. That's what made my comment, but it's actually 600,000 that is being expensed through the P&L, which will increase the reserve.
Increasing the reserve.
Right,
Okay, so
by
this is
600,000.
annually.
Yeah.
I got you. Thank you for looking at that.
Okay, almost there.
We really appreciate, I mean, I went through this deck at length, and I was so impressed by the amount of information and how much hard work obviously went into
Yeah.
creating all of these presentations. We thank you for it.
A lot of staff work on that. Very, very proud of everybody's work on it. And as I mentioned before, we really started from the ground up, so it was a great exercise for everyone. Capital and major projects, we did go over this during the study session, but at the suggestion of the public and the committee, we've added comments. So I'm going to turn that over to Ken to go over capital.
So again, we were getting on to our number 4 when we finally got to capital expenditures and major projects. So at the suggestion of the committee, we went, and instead of having Jerry go through each project that night, item by item, and give an update, we went away and flushed out a little more verbiage on each one. That documentation has been provided. Again, the team is happy to walk through every single project line by line. We'd be reading those notes. If there's specific ones that we want to jump to and we can ask questions, happy to move this forward however you would like.
I have a question on the Lot G line item. It just
Okay.
says back to house operations. Maybe a little more detail on that, It's 220,000 budgeted for it.
So Lot G, last year, we had almost $1 million to redo that entire lot. Some of the work has been done in 19, and in 2020, some of the underground work is being carried in the budget, water, sewer, electrical. If you take a look at that map, you can see the amount of trailers and storage that happens out there at fair time, and we need to increase the abilities out there.
I have a couple of comments relative to the capital and the whole budget. And I've shared these with Michelle. I was unable to attend the workshop last week due to personal reasons. But first of all, I want to compliment the staff, everyone in the room here, on the detail that was provided in terms of both the operating and the capital budgets. My questions relating to capital, and as Andrea said earlier, I would envision the board adopting the budgets at the December meeting. I've got a series of questions and requests, if you will, that I'd like to have addressed as a part of the process between now and December 21st. I guess initially as an overview comment, I think it's important that the board, all of these projects are important or they wouldn't be on the list, but I think it's important that we as a board prioritize these so that we don't get to the end of the year and find that the board's #1 priority ended up being number 10 and we never got to it. And I think we need to articulate to staff what our priorities are. I have come up with a preliminary list. I can share that now, or we can do it as a part of the process on the 21st. But from my perspective, and I think I've said this earlier on some other issues, health and safety trumps everything. There are a number of fire sprinkler projects in there, electrical upgrades, HVAC units, parking lot maintenance issues. All of those I would lump into my #1 priority. And I would assume that while we've identified individual buildings for the sprinkler systems, that you're going to combine all of those into one single project and bid it all?
We may or may not be able to. We're driven a lot by how busy each building is, when they're available, so we may or may not be able to do that. But we can look at it, Doug, absolutely.
I think that would be more cost effective, and obviously in the bid package, we can articulate, you can't be in this building on this date, so on and so forth. But I would think if you bid all the fire sprinklers, all the electrical, all of the maintenance issues that are health and safety issues in one package, obviously the fire sprinklers would be separate, you're gonna get a much better bid than going out and doing one building at a time, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Secondly, right behind health and safety, or maybe on top of health and safety, getting the infrastructure audit completed sooner rather than later so that Natalie and Ashley can bring forward that, I think is extremely important. We can't get back to the master plan until that has been completed, and I think we should do that right at the top of the list.
Yeah, and that's well underway with we already approved that process, so.
From an aesthetic standpoint, the PACAP berm needs to be looked at and addressed at the earliest possible date. In terms of parking lot maintenance, I think a single contract that we would go out to bid on, and it could be done in phases over the course of the year, but I think we're going to get a much better bid if we have one contractor doing all of the parking lot maintenance work. And I'd like to see all of that combined into a single project. I noticed that we've got the Action Arena sound wall in year 2 and 3. I think for benefit of our neighbors, I'd like to see that Action Sports Arena wall moved into this year's budget and accelerated. In terms of general landscaping, the extension of the Heroes Hall Phase 2 to put artificial turf in that whole area there, I think opens up a number of other possibilities for use, and also would address some maintenance issues. Then I'd like to know, as we go through these projects, you know, we have 100,000 in one area, we've got 5,000 in another area. I'd like to know what projects are going to be done by force account, which would be our internal staff, and which projects are going to be bid out. And that's, I think, information that'll be beneficial to the board when we consider what's our number one priority. And again, they're only mine. There's 7 others that need to look at it and see what their priorities are. And the important thing is, I think from a policy standpoint, we just need to bring closure on that, so everybody knows that we're all on the same page of the sheet music.
Yeah, and the carryover projects, I think, are important as well, especially the stormwater infrastructure, which we've been, I know that we're making some progress on that, and if you want to provide an update, it's brief. I know we've made headway there, and then the property signage is pretty big, so those are.
I think the stormwater fall in the desilting basin, that all falls into the health and safety side of the equation.
So I have a question. How is this CapEx plan syncing with the site audit once I know that
Well, and,
RFP's in
yeah,
process,
and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know these are things that need to be done anyway, and they don't really fall. So that was one of the things that Ashley and I made very, we worked very closely with Ken and team to talk about what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing, and he can expand on this. But we really didn't want to make any improvements that could potentially not be useful after we have the master site plan and the infrastructure audit conducted. So these are things that just need to be done anyway, and probably will not have an impact on, or will not be part of that infrastructure site audit. Those are major things that we're looking at. Buildings, you know, what are things that need to be done. So.
My only other comment on the capital, and I've raised this on a couple of occasions, this is a monumental undertaking, and I think as we talked before, I think it would behoove us to look at a process where we can get additional capital project managers, construction managers approved through Department of General Services. I have no problem with the agency that we use now, but this is a very monumental program, and the more resources we have there that we can utilize for construction and project management, the better off. So I'd like to see that agendized as either as a part of the budget process in December or at the January meeting, so we can proceed with getting other entities. There are a number of Orange County firms, well, in the whole area, that do this kind of work, and I think it would behoove us to have that as an additional resource to help manage the projects.
Yeah, and we can look at this further in the infrastructure committee as well. Based on the budget workshop that we had, one of the things that I think came up during this discussion was the equestrian center. And I think we talked about getting a copy of the contract so that we can look at what needed to be, you know, what are things that we might be looking at to add to this list. It also, it was brought to our attention that we have not had a contract in place for quite some time. So they're on a month-to-month. So it's.
the operator is.
Yes. So now we've asked for us to take a look at that contract and possibly get something in place for the future.
I think that's such a good point, and I'll share that I had the opportunity to visit the Equestrian Center a month or two ago, and was very warmly welcomed by 2 of the equestrians, and got to tour the facility. And there clearly are things that need some attention, and I realize that there's probably been some confusion as to role, given that we've got this contract with an operator for the facility. But I think we should look hard at it and think about ways that we can maximize the use of that facility, and anything that needs to be brought up to current or it could be improved. I really view that as a gem. I mean, it just relates so significantly to the identity of our property, and there are so few of these equestrian centers left that I know from a friend whose child used to do equestrian vaulting. There are so few of them in Southern California, and so I really think we should cherish that facility and think about strategic ways to enhance it, and if that means that we need to take over in-house management of the property rather than going through a third party, I think we should consider that, discuss that. So I'm happy that we're gonna look at the contract, and
Yeah, something
I
to
think
assess.
it'd be great for the facilities committee to look at it, and then for the full board to study it as well.
Perfect. And then just to mention too, Ken and team have been making improvements as requested by the current operator. So there was a member of the public here who just wanted to thank staff for being responsive when issues occurred, and also for their sensitivity when dealing with the horses and the environment that they're currently in.
So the only comment, sorry, Sandra.
No, I was just going to say that communication is so key. And I'm really excited that we are spending a little bit more time communicating. And I know that I visited as well, and just assessing the uniqueness of the items that need to get dealt with, or just the communication feedback that we're getting. I think together communicating, we will be able to go ahead and continue making this a real gem.
So as it relates to direction given, it's been for a couple of years now, and Doug's been a great help in this. We look at the projects to ensure that what we're trying to complete, last year and this year would not impact any decisions on the master site plan. And of course, for this year, information and feedback that we'll get through the infrastructure audit. So with that, the only one comment that I'll address, Doug, is maybe the ASA sound wall would fall into that bucket of what could change as a result of getting those two studies done in the master site plan. So that's why it's pushed ahead, because if there's changes in that area, have we done the right thing in the right place? So that was just some thinking around that.
Okay.
So then can we circle back on all of these discussion points
Sure.
at the next meeting?
You bet. Okay.
And I thought the suggestion was really good to include information about which ones are going to be bid versus handled in-house. And
Right.
you had one other item you wanted to see in the presentation, I think.
Just going forward with looking at the ability of bringing on additional firms to handle construction management and project management for us. So we have maybe 2 or 3. Correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor, but my recollection from earlier conversations, keeping in mind it's not as good as it used to be, but you could do that, but General Services is going to have to ultimately approve any additional construction management services or project management. So we're gonna have to go through some sort of process with them to get these firms certified.
And Ken can probably answer that question, right?
Ken could, and I'll defer to Ken, but what I can also tell you is I know the DGS maintains a list on its website of firms that have been approved to date, and so it's not as if you have to start over each time you're looking to use some other entity that's not a state agency to be the manager for the construction project.
That might be a good first step, is to find out who's on that list.
Well, let's look at, what is the current process?
So, current, and we've done this year after year for about 3 years, because Doug has asked us to, and we've gone to the website. DGS is building roads and bridges, and a lot of the people on that list are doing those types of work and not the types of work we've done. So we keep going in a bit of a circle. The letter that we shared with the committee clearly spelled out the delegation of authority to CCA for the inspections on this site and the management of projects. So we feel like our hands are tied with CCA. If a firm wanted to, they would have to apply to DGS, not us. So if another firm wanted to be delegated, have delegated authority, they would have to pick up that torch.
Well, there are a number of firms that do this, and I have no problem with CCA. I'm just saying that the more we have
I agree with you.
certified to do that, the better it's gonna be for us. Certainly from a a bid standpoint.
We couldn't agree more.
Well, could we ask CCA to do outreach to get more, project managers to seek certification?
Well, they'd be asking for
I mean, 'cause
them
there's-
to identify their competitors.
But there's nothing for us, I think our, this policy seems to have already been set by the state.
Yes.
So I don't know if
Something we
there's
need to
something we
raise
can
with
do.
DGS to,
Well, I think we need to find out what the DGS process is to get additional firms certified. There are a number of major architectural, engineering, and construction management firms in Orange County and San Diego County alone. We need to find out what that process is, and then reach out to those firms and see if they have any interest in being considered for this. I would think they would, because obviously that's a business opportunity for them. So we should find out what we need to do, and then I think we can reach out to these firms. I can give you a list of 10 firms that do this kind of stuff, and if nobody's interested, so be it, nobody's interested. But my guess is they are gonna be interested, because it's,
Yeah.
Can you
And
give us a
we
copy?
agree with Doug.
Yeah.
I mean, in any other format, we would be utilizing different firms for different things. I do know that, I believe it was 2016, then Director Mouette and Executive Management went to Sacramento to go through all those doors, to flush that through, and again, that went around and around and around. So, not that the exercise isn't worth repeating. Again, I don't know that we'll get there in advance of approving projects. So we're always happy to look at that, because it's better for us if we had more options. Currently, they're not there. So I do agree with Doug that
Maybe that's
those
something-
options do not exist, and there are many firms. We've met with them. There's some
Yeah.
great firms out there.
Maybe that's something either Doug and I in audit and compliance can look at. I don't know if this is a CDFA policy or what, I think I first need to look at what the policy is that delegates authority to. Is it DGA? or
DGS.
DGS.
Yeah.
So I.
It's statutory, I've read about this
So, yeah, so
before.
we have, I mean, cause I don't wanna take staff in a circle where we can't really do anything. So maybe you and I can explore that
Right.
policy together, and then we can.
Facilities committee.
Figure out
Yeah,
what the
or the
process is to
infrastructure committee.
advocate for a waiver,
Right.
or if there can be firms approved just for our use, or whatever, understanding that DGS approval process would be
Right,
useful.
and I, to Doug's point, I mean, even with, some of the other RFPs that we've put out, we have not received a significant amount of, people coming up and, wanting to work with us. So I think it would be good if we explored the opportunity, but we also need to understand what we're working within.
Yes.
I think a good first step would be for Natalie and I to have a conversation with Gonzalez, and they're on a retainer, and just say, okay, here's the question, what do we need to do to get from A to Z? And, obviously, they have the ability to sort that out and spend a lot of time that we don't have to spend.
And that might be good. I do not know, Doug, if that resource was used when the trip was made in 2016, so that's a good suggestion.
I do remember the trip, and Gerardo and staff, I think, went up at that time and basically got, okay, you can do it, but here's the process you need to go through, so.
Okay.
Well, so you guys will get in touch with Gonzalez and see how we can move that forward.
And Ken, thank you for the update.
Okay, just a few additional slides, and then we can look at the roll-up. Governing policy 2.3.5 requires the CEO to provide a list to the board during the budget process of any items in the budget that exceed $50,000, which are not approved by a contract, an LOU or rental agreement, or is not payment for utilities, CalCard expenditures, insurance, payroll, or state mandated employee services. So most of our expenses over $50,000 in the budget fall into one of those categories. These are the 5 items that do not. So we're bringing that to the board's attention. That would include sales and use tax through Board of Equalization, state fire marshal services, attorney's fees through the Department of Justice, California non-resident withholding remittance for the Franchise Tax Board, and fair uniforms, so, which are bid out, but they're not included in those other categories. Okay?
Let me make one quick comment, Michelle, just so that Doug doesn't think I've forgotten about him. I know that this topic is something that's of a high priority, the contracting process, and it's on our list. The governing committee work is slow work, but it's there, and we are gonna get to it, I promise you.
Great. Thank you.
The board also asked last year to be made aware upfront during each budget process of multi-year contracts that would require RFPs in any given budget year. So these are all of the RFPs that we will need to work on beginning in 2020. You can see that toward the bottom, several of these services, the contract doesn't expire until 2021, but we begin working on RFPs approximately 6 months ahead of when that expiration date is posted. So, for example, our website services, that contract doesn't expire until the end of May, but we would need to start working on that at the end of 2020. So this is the list of RFPs, and it's up to the board's discretion if there are any that the board would like to see come back or be worked on in committees.
Could you quickly read through those,
Sure,
Michelle? Just
sure.
the-
Mobile unit rental, that's for the mobile offices and mobile units that we, trailers and whatnot that we rent during the fair. Acoustic design, audio testing and mitigation. Entertainment booking, our radio rentals, medical technician services, that's the EMS services that we use during year-round events. Legislative representation services, currently with Gonzalez and Sons, rental bleachers for the Action Sports Arena and other areas, restroom trailers with ADA compliance, our shuttle services that bring employees and guests from off-site locations, fencing, and then our website services.
Now, where does RCS and Spectra fall in the equation? How many years are left on those two?
So I'll reconfirm, but memory RCS is 2022, and Spectra, through the purchase of Marketplace, there was the extension, and I believe there's 5 or 6 years left on that contract.
The Marketplace contract is part of that's part of the whole Spectra contract?
It is. I mean, they're two independents, but what happened as a result of the purchase, their F&B, or what the Spectra proper, was extended.
Speaking of the Marketplace, Doug and I were talking about it earlier. Could you bring back Michelle as a part of the December 21st report?
It's the 12th, Doug, by the way. December 12th is the December meeting.
Okay, if you could bring back the information on where we stand in terms of the Marketplace. There was some 5 and 10 and 15-year projections. Just kind of a look-see at where we stand now. It's kind of a continuation of unless that's already in the packet.
Well, we were gonna have a meeting with the new facilities committee, because that, I think, looped in the tenant liaison. So
That's fine.
that's a suggested topic to start renewed discussions with that committee. So I don't think we'll have anything for December, Doug, if that's okay, because we were gonna try to get a committee meeting together.
I'm fine with that. I just, at some point in time, I'd kind of like to know actual versus projected in terms of how the Marketplace is done.
You know, something that I think would make sense with these, let's assume that they should go to a committee for a look. Any of these multi-year contracts coming up for RFP. And so we should sort out which committees would make the most sense for these to go before, and then they can decide, the committee can give a guidance on whether that's something that needs to come to the full board. But, I mean, some of them, it's obvious, legislative representation, go to the legislative committee. All these facilities-related things, as long as we're not overloading Natalie and Ashley, throw it to the facilities committee to just take a look and see if we need to escalate them.
That's a good suggestion. I think that makes a lot of sense. the objective is not to slow it down, the objective is just to make sure that as appropriate, the board is informed of where we're at on various matters. And I'm very comfortable with what you're doing on the governance and what Natalie and Ashley are doing on the infrastructure. So as long as it goes to the committee, I think that's good.
And we'll make sure to report on it. Josh, if we have a committee meeting, is it okay to send an email to the board just letting them know what the outcome was, or is that something we should definitely bring back to a board meeting?
Committee meeting reports should be reported out in public sessions, and members
Okay.
of the public can also be privy to that information.
So we will make sure that our reports are robust and detailed.
So Andreas, thanks for that, and we did that exercise on the 19. We had found one where we didn't know where it would fall, so if we do that for we'll ask, hey, where do you want this one, because it's kind of not, it could fall into a couple of different buckets,
Maybe
and then
just-
we'll drive on.
If there's any that don't fit a committee, then bring it to Sandra and me.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so here's how we roll up. Our projected revenues from self-produced events, 39.4 million. From rental revenue, 11.3 million. Total non-operating revenue is another 45,000, so we're budgeting for total revenue of 50.77 million. On the expense side, total operating expenses of 46 million, including the major projects, 511,000. So total operating expenses of 46.5 million. Net proceeds from operation would be 4.2 million. And then if we factor in depreciation, GASB 68, interest earnings, and then other non-operating revenue, that takes out 2.6 million. Our budgeted total net proceeds for 2020 will be 1.62 million. So let me go back to the labor again, because this budget is all about labor. Remember, our budgeted labor is just under 1.9 million. In addition to, 1.9 million. So if you look at our net proceeds anticipated from this budget, and understand that next year, in 2021, we're gonna have another dollar increase in minimum wage, in addition to anticipated increase in PERS contributions and whatnot, that could have quite a significant effect on our budgets moving forward. So I think, Natalie, you asked about, projections or what kind of effect some of these items would have on the budget. I think, it's a pretty clear picture there. As I mentioned before, we did not build into the budget any increases in gate admissions or in parking, but certainly can do that work to bring that information to the board if that's something that you would want to consider. In this budget, we also did not include the SB 84 funds, that's the PERS payback, on the recommendation of CDFA, nor did we include any costs that would involve new parking or traffic solutions. There's just too many unknowns at this point. We would need to bring that back to the board separately as well.
Yeah, and one of the things we also asked for when we have the discussion about potentially increasing gate prices for the community, we talked about what would that look like if we increased our cost for some of our vendors. So I know we already have a contract with RCS, but other vendors who are here, you did give us a snapshot of what some of the rental spaces would look like, but are there opportunities to increase some of those other revenue generating areas that we have as well? So those are things that we want to explore. I know one of the board members a few months back, when we had this discussion about increasing gate prices, asked for a projection of what that would look like. And then I think she also asked for us to look at, what some of these other increases would involve. So if we could get that for December may be aggressive, but if you could provide us with some detail, at least a projected overview would be ideal, because then we can have a conversation about that, yeah.
I think what might be a good exercise is to look at this roll-up and then factor in several different scenarios. For example, if we increased our weekend admission to the fair by $1, that would result in $205,000 of extra revenue. By $2, $410,000. If we increased, year-round parking by $1, so instead of $9, it's now $10, which, by the way, would be operationally much easier too, because you're not giving change out. It makes the line move quicker. What would that dollar increase be? It's approximately $250,000. So I think what might be helpful is to have different scenarios at that December meeting that we could see how that would affect the bottom line.
And ideas of other ways to generate revenue would be good as well. I think something that was mentioned was some of the administrative fees that we could possibly collect for some of the partners who are we're transitioning money back and forth for resources that we're providing, but we're not charging them for. So that's an opportunity for an administrative fee, whether it's 20 to 30%, but that's an area for us to. I just don't want the entire impact for the increase to fall onto the community when we can be looking at other ways to generate the revenue.
This may be in here and I didn't observe it, but a list of who the biggest contracts are related to the annual fair. Obviously, RCS is one and Inspectra is one, but what kind of a breakdown of where the major amounts of revenue are coming from in terms of vendors, I think would be really instructive too.
And I think on that point from Natalie and Andreas, back to RCS, Spectra, refresh my memory, does each year it get extended? Do we have the ability at any point in time to go back and have discussions with RCS relative to their, participation with us? Or are we fixed at a specific amount until the contract's up?
Well, the contract does include a fixed amount, but there's always opportunities to go back and amend those contracts.
Yep, I think might be worth looking at. And we also need to get another car auction out here, like we had in the past. For those that weren't on the board at the time, can't remember the name of the firm.
Jackson.
Yeah, Barrett Jackson. I think that generated net revenues to us of about $400,000 a year. But obviously, it wasn't an ideal business opportunity for them. So, but there might be some other, opportunities out there that we could, be fishing a little bit to see what we might be able to do.
Because just the increase to the ticket prices or even increasing parking alone is not going to cover the increase in the wage expenses that we're going to have. So I think we definitely have to look at other ways to generate revenue or cut expenses.
Very good.
As a side note, Cirque du Soleil is already advertising their returning to the OC Fair and Event Center in March, so.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. What about that big horse thing that happens down in Laguna?
They route all throughout the U.S. I'm not sure when they'll be back. We are working on some very exciting events for 2020. Still in negotiation, so not ready to report on. But to your point, Doug, those events, they not only generate great revenue, but they really help identify our property too.
Yeah, the first one's good. Can't remember what it's called.
That's a funny name.
Cavalier.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I remember they were down in Irvine, I think, there.
Yes.
One last comment, I'm sorry, on the multi-year contracts. Let's make sure those are going to the committees with lots of time, not, this is what it is and we don't have time to do anything else. And, we've got to give time for the involvement of the committee.
Very good. Couple of other pieces that go into, that factor into the budget. Board Policy 2.3.1C indicates that the CEO will not allow unencumbered cash and cash equivalents to drop below 25% of annualized operating expenditures. So our 2020 budget, we're projecting those operating expenses to be 46 million. 25% of that is 11.5 million, and as you can see, we're in good shape with that. Okay. The committee also asked us to do a detailed cash flow statement following the budget study session, in addition to a pro forma balance sheet for 2020. There were two reports that were drafted and unfortunately were posted really before we had an opportunity to fully vet them. We took those off of the website, so any board members or public that might have printed those or downloaded those, we're asking that you set those aside. We're going to do some additional work, working with the committee on those and bring them back subsequently. But we did want to provide a simple cash flow projection with regard to this budget. So if we start off with our net proceeds from 2020 at 1.62 million, if we add that depreciation expense and the GASB 68 funds, then our net cash provided by operating activities will come in around 5.5 million. Back out our capital projects, we'll have a net increase in cash of 2.88 million. And our projected cash position at the beginning of the year, we're estimating around 55 million, so that should put us at the end of the year at about 57.88 million. Okay, and again, we can do a much more detailed financial cash flow projection with a little more guidance from the Financial Monitoring Committee.
I'm still puzzled by this GASB 68. How does that, that's an increase in our cash position?
It's a non-cash expense that's recorded on P&L. So just like a depreciation expense, you know, a lot of that money's already been used, but they have to depreciate over time. Both of those are non-cash. So you add them back because that 1.6 reflects the reduction of the non-cash.
I got it, okay. Yeah. I'll get it eventually.
I just want to reiterate again how much I really appreciate the work that the staff put into this. I think we all know it's kind of been an extraordinary couple of weeks here, and we have some real talent in our accounting department. I think what this needs is a little more time and a little more work, and we're certainly willing to do that, but we just didn't want to bring something forward to the board or the public that needed a little more work, so we will absolutely do that.
Okay, well, with that, I would like everybody to help me celebrate and compliment this incredible team with Michelle. Let's give her a big hand. And then, thank you
Sandra,
so much, Director Pham, and everybody that was present that day.
Sandra, if I could make just one additional comment, and I did share this with Michelle several days ago. While I was not at the meeting, I've gone through every single one of the departments or programs, however you want to identify it. One of the things I think would be important to benefit not only us and staff, but those in the audience would be to put words to the numbers. If we could take each one of those departments, maybe it's just a sentence that describes the box office, or maybe it's a paragraph or two on some of the others, so that somebody can go online after the budget's approved and say, oh, that's what they do in this particular department. I think that would be very helpful, as well as a budget transmittal letter from the CEO that just kind of summarizes what Michelle's gone through here. I think all of that would be useful information to the public and to ourselves.
It. So I definitely think you should watch the video because Jared gave a great presentation.
Right. No, and I think we just need to have the words on paper so that someone can go online and find out, well, here's what we do in event production. And
Absolutely, they're all great comments.
Right, and that's why the workshop was so beneficial, because we had a lot of detail. I mean,
Well, and all
there's
this
more-
information,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I was new last year, so understanding the budget in detail was difficult anyway, but
Right.
I feel like I understand this in a way that's
Yeah.
completely different from previously. I do want to be cognizant and thankful to Reggie and Carolyn for their patience as we waited for their input and now call on them for the public comment. Reggie, you're up first.
No worries, thank you. I'm Reggie Mundicus. I'm discussing the 2020 budget. So I'd like to thank staff and the board for the great budget presentation, because this is the best budget that's been brought forward. We all understand now how the money's being generated and how it's being spent. I like the idea of the budget priorities, placing an emphasis on health and safety and environmental concerns. I also like the idea of trying to find a way to build the sound wall for the action sports arena. Unless staff is planning on moving the action sports arena at some point in time, and that may be under consideration, I'm not sure why that sound wall can't be built, because it keeps getting proposed and then gets pushed out, and when people try to start to work on it, they get told, no, we're not going to do that. So we need to get that done. It's for the benefit of the neighborhoods around here. I would also like to thank you for the 2020 cash flow projection, because that's a very clear summary of the results of everybody's hard work, that we're cash flow positive and that we have substantial savings that we can use for various projects and our needs. So we're also going to be thinking of other ways of generating revenue, such as the fees, the administrative fees, because it does take a certain amount of time to correctly reconcile some of those bills from like the sheriff's department, security services, and outside services. The carnival contract needs to be looked at, because it's a very old contract. It's not well written. It's a patchwork quilt of contracts, because it just does not track from start to finish. So one of the issues with the carnival is who is paying the credit card fees and the other merchant banking fees, because the fairgrounds does a lot of the ticket sales, and it's not clear on who should be paying the credit card fees that are being taken by the fairgrounds for credit card and debit card sales. Also, the carnival contract doesn't include the non-discrimination clauses that are required for other state contracts. So that's something we need to look at going forward for those contracts like that. So lots of good work, lots of moving forward. So let's continue these discussions so we can get a great budget and great projects going forward in 2020. I like the idea of trying to find other hands to help get the capital projects done. And the ideas of ganging up on the fire sprinkler and the paving contracts and getting better pricing and performance on those, because that's what cities do. They have like one, they do large contracts for various maintenance and landscaping projects. So really great work, guys. Let's keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Reggie.
Carolyn had to leave.
Oh, okay, got it. Then I think that wraps the public comment. If we could confirm on the carnival contract at the next meeting what the date of the expiration is, and also if we can clarify on all of those, if the date that it's coming up, is that assuming no option year is exercised, or there is no option year, or it's just that's the end, done. That's good to know. But also then, let's make sure we're mindful of any contracts that are coming up that have an option year to be considered, so that that same analysis goes into deciding whether we want to actually exercise the option or not.
And we have an evaluation process. Actually, it was adopted by the board 2 years ago, where before we renew an option year with a contractor, that we go through an evaluation process. So I can fill you in on that.
Oh, if you can share that, that'd be great. I think everyone would love to see that. Anything further on the budget presentation?
Nope, good job.
Very good job.
Thank you.
That's hard work. Thank you so much. Next up on the agenda, this is something we tabled at the last meeting. It's the delegation of signature authority that the board reviews every year. This is signature authority on contracts and agreements and POs. The discussion that we'd had was at a minimum to remove the named designees and just designate offices. Anything further to expand on
Yeah,
this
I
one?
can expand. So this is an item that, so Michelle and I and,
This is,
yeah,
I
this
think,
is an audit committee thing.
I think that's the D.
Is that D?
That's the bank
Okay,
cards.
D, okay, that's different.
This is,
Yeah. This was one of the housekeeping items that came up last month. We tabled it because there were names attached to those titles. And so we were requested to come back, amending this policy to take out the names and just have job titles. So this delegates the CEO up to $50,000 to sign general contracts and up to $300,000 for talent guarantees. And then for the CEO to delegate up to $50,000 to the vice presidents that are listed. And you'll see toward the bottom where that over $50,000 expenditure budget schedule comes in. So any of those items that were mandatories like payroll, LOUs, approved contracts, et cetera. That's why we submitted that as part of the budget.
Is this also the item that we talked about, the governance committee reviewing at some point?
it's definitely on our list.
And we
yes.
can, I think we, just to refresh my recollection, we also talked about, we can come back anytime and add this to
Anytime.
the agenda as an action item if we
That's
feel
right.
like there's a concern.
That is correct.
Right.
It's a revocable delegation. I think we need to renew it, well, I don't know that we're renewing it, whatever, reapproving it because operations need to continue.
Right.
We do have a comment card. Are there other board comments before we take the comment? Okay, Reggie, you have a comment card on this item?
I am Reggie Mundicus. I'm discussing the delegation of authority. I like what you did as far as taking out specific names and putting in job titles. Given that there's a lot of discussion going on regarding governance, manual writing, and coming up with new policies, I understand that this delegation of authority is needed in order to operate, but the board needs to understand that state law allows you to revoke or change any delegation of authority at any time without notice. And is there any way to append this with a statement to the effect of, when in doubt, ask the board? Because of some prior situations that have arisen with the misuse of the delegation of authority and the lack of, we're just going to say, sound judgment. So those are my concerns. Since we already have groups working on improving operations, I don't want to spend too much time wordsmithing this. But those two items as far as revocation under law and when in doubt, ask the board, are just things to keep in mind. Thank you.
I think that's a really fair comment, Reggie, and I think it's something that we've been discussing at length, is that even where a delegation is made and something is entirely within the authority of staff, exercising the judgment on items that may seem to have some controversy around them or have sensitivity or there could be something outward facing that could have a consequence. It's a great point to be constantly mindful of things that, even though within the limits of a delegation, may be something that the board wants to look at, so.
I don't know if I don't know if adding that language would add any benefit or substance to the current language. I mean, that's very subjective, right? So
I would hesitate to change the language of the delegation. I
but
think it's just a point of impression.
Yeah, and I think that's a relationship that the board needs to make sure that we have with our CEO and staff either way. I don't know if putting it in there would hold the person to the fire any more than just, I mean, especially because we can change it anytime, right? That's my 2 cents. But.
I would move the item with the, I would move the item and just make the general comment that Michelle and staff should converse with the chair and vice chair if there are any questions, period. But the item would be as it is crafted.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say the same thing. It's more of a common sense thing than needing to have a sentence in there, so.
Anything from management on that?
Correct.
We have a motion to approve the delegation as drafted. Is there a second?
Okay.
Thank you. Could we roll call the vote, please?
Chair Cervantes,
Yes.
Vice Chair Meyer,
Yes.
Director LaBelle,
Yes.
Director Pham,
Yes.
and Director Rubalcava Garcia.
Yes.
The comments also shouldn't be taken to mean that we lack confidence in the judgment of our incumbents. Item D, this is yours, Natalie.
This is us. Okay, so Audit Committee has met with the auditor about some preliminary 2018 findings. And one of the things that he did bring to our attention is that we are not currently complying with a policy that's in place that requires the 32nd DAA have a second designated signer for all transactions that are 15,000 or more. And that's EFT, so electronic, as well as checks. The audit committee has met, and one of the recommendations that we would like to make to the board is that the second signer be the vice chair or the chair. So that is open for discussion, but that is something that Doug and I have talked about.
So these are not contracts, these are checks.
Checks,
Yeah.
checks, payments.
What's the volume we're talking about?
On a weekly basis, there are anywhere between 15 and 20 checks that are over 15,000 that require a second signature, many, many more during the fair. A good example is the entertainment checks to pay the headline acts at the Pacific Amphitheater. Those are often well over 15,000, and usually those checks are cut that day, you know, and require a pretty quick turnaround. Usually late, yeah, true. I'm trying to think of different scenarios.
So our current signatories are the two of you,
Correct.
and so we need a third signatory.
No, we don't have, there's nothing in writing. So it just needs to be put in writing who the designated person is. It's something the board has to adopt. So just to kind of give background, so the 2018, some of the findings that our auditor has discovered is that we don't have a designated person to sign these transactions. It can be somebody from the board, it can be an executive committee member. When Doug and I met, the discussion went to, we both agreed that it should be somebody from the board, vice chair or chair, but we are open to discussion for that. So, and other recommendations. So this is purely, we do want to adopt the policy today so that we can start to check some of the things off of that 2018 audit list, but we also are open to your feedback.
It may be, depending on the volume, it may be, you want to and Natalie and I did talk, and felt it should be the chair and vice chair, because you're the most in tune with what's going on a given basis, but it could be any of the 8 or 9 of us that would sign it. I'm on another nonprofit, I'm the treasurer, but every single one of the board members has the ability to sign on certain checks at certain amounts, so I sign very few. Occasionally I do, but, so that might be something we would want to.
So our current bank signature cards, who's on them? The two
Jen
of
and
you?
I are, yes.
But we don't have a policy in place.
I mean,
And
the
that's
policy on
required.
who our
Yes,
bank sign, oh,
yes.
I got you,
Yeah.
okay.
And the auditor recommended
The
a
board
second
has,
signature.
yes.
I have a couple of work concerns about it being us. The first being availability. I just, if the frequency is on a weekly basis, I can't commit to get down here every week. But the second thing is, I would hesitate about signing something I don't know a lot about. I mean, if there are staff members who actually know the substance of what they're signing, I'm not one who loves to sign my name just willy-nilly. I don't know, Sandra, what do you think?
Let me raise.
Just for clarity, is that the audit, the partner recommended 2 signatures, not necessarily the second signature being the board member? Or did he recommend, or he or she
He just
recommend?
said, yeah, he said it could be a board member. It could be, yeah. He said in Sandra, other organizations, it could be the CFO, it could be the vice president of operations. It's,
Yeah, I'm just concerned that it's a
but the
bit
board has to vote on it.
too granular and too micro, just very involved. Like was said earlier, a lot of these things, I don't have any idea what it's about. Wouldn't it be more appropriate to have the CEO sign and the secondary signature or the primary signature being the division head and the CEO signing off on it, something like that. I mean, that's pretty normal, duality in signatures, especially above certain thresholds.
Also, I think that the conversation today really is about adopting it. It's not adopted. So if we choose as a board to have the CEO and a second person and adopt that, that takes care of that. If we choose as a board to have 3 people in the event that the CEO and the second person is not available, then we need to go ahead and identify the third person, which I also feel the same way that Director Meyer feels. I think that would really be micromanaging, and that's not in a position that I want to be at. And I think in order to sign those checks, we need to go ahead and invest and do more homework before we do sign those checks. And that's going to be, an area that is not really our specific area that we need to be focused on. So I personally propose that maybe we can identify another person that has been with the OC Fair and Events Center for a very long period of time, who works very closely with the CEO and Ken, that are the 2 people right now, and, consider moving in that direction.
Maybe I could add, and I did share this with Natalie when we spoke. Right now, we're back on track. We see the payables, but they're after the fact. They've already been dispersed. Now, do we issue payables on a monthly basis, bi-weekly? How do we do that?
It's weekly.
Weekly, okay. Here's a process that is used in virtually every city that I have ever been in. Let me share the last city. We had a council committee of 2 that reviewed all of the payables before they went on the consent calendar. Most cities actually approve all of the payables in terms of a warrant register, meeting twice a month. So what happens is 2 members of the council would meet with the city manager and the director of finance and would go through the proposed payables and would have a question on this or a question on that, so on and so forth. That kind of rotated through the system over the course of years, so every council member had served on the committee. So what happened is that when the warrant register came on the council agenda, the council knew that 2 of their colleagues, plus the city manager, plus the director of finance, had vetted everything that was on there. And questions would come up sometime, well, why are we doing this? And that didn't mean that a council member couldn't ask a question on the warrant register, but it happened once in a blue moon because of the process that was set up. I think maybe generically what we need to do is look at a process that doesn't encumber staff, but gives this board a comfort level on payables being made to X, Y, and Z. Because we've had some examples of things that we found out about after the fact, and once you've issued the check, it's too late to do anything. I just think we maybe need to look at the procedure, whether it's the audit committee or the chair and vice chair. I just think we need to look at something that creates a system where we have a comfort level.
Yeah, so to kind of build off of what Doug's saying, so what we're hearing the board say right now is it's too much to have a board member be that second signer. So would you entertain a discussion of having either the vice president of operations be that second signer, just so that we can resolve that policy issue for now?
If he's already on the bank card, I'd say we just adopt the 2 of them are our signers, and then we can include this in the governance policy review if you want to have that study.
And in my, I don't know, Doug, what are your thoughts, but I think it would be Ken until the vice president of operations is on board, because typically, finance, it would, typically, the finance person is the person signing the check in addition to the CEO, so.
And I think ideally we'd have 3 in case an executive is out. And you still need
Exactly.
a second
Yeah, and right now, we
signature.
don't have anybody designated beyond the CEO.
So here's this question. If it's the 2 of you, is that enough enough for right now? Do you want to think about that until next month and see if there's a third person to, on an interim basis, assign? Who's on staff? I mean, I totally understand and appreciate the points and what you just said about finding out about things after the fact. I'm right there with you. But I also don't want to see either the operation come to a halt, or frankly, I don't want to have to go drill down into every single thing.
Right.
The volume of work that and time we're putting in right now is really substantial. I couldn't commit to that kind of a time commitment right now.
Right, and if we get the accounts payable after the fact, and there's something that is alarming at that point, then we revisit the process.
Sure.
We can change it anytime.
I think that was my point, is that can be changed anytime or updated. What might be helpful, I'm thinking about, keeping the ball rolling here. Maybe what would be good is to designate the CEO and the Vice President of Operations at this point, and then maybe put in a statement, and I don't know how to write it at this point, but we could worry about that later. But maybe that should a third signer be required in the CEO's absence, that that be delegated on a temporary basis. I'm just thinking about a time that maybe, if I may be out of town, or if Ken is out of town and we need,
So I mean, what about, we could propose, it could be one of two people, the Vice President of Operations or the Vice President of Finance. But I mean, that doesn't solve the problem if, in the interim.
What I would be comfortable with, and Sandra, tell me what you think about this, but I would be fine with us being signatories on the name cards to the extent that there's something urgent comes up, somebody's out of town, you need a second signature, we can talk about that on an ad hoc.
There you
Okay,
go.
we'll look at it and you can explain what the thing is. I'd be comfortable with that if it's just on an as needed, just not on a routine basis.
So VP of Operations, CEO, and in the situation where
If an
one is
additional
not
signer is
there,
needed, the
then
chair or the vice chair.
There
okay.
you go. Okay.
And then we will revisit this when the Vice President of Finance, because I don't want to take that from the Vice President of Finance. That's probably a key part of that person's role.
Yeah.
So we will revisit that when, if that's okay with the board, when that is
Absolutely,
resolved.
yes, that's a great idea.
Okay, so we will amend this, and can we take a vote?
Any other comments?
I'm good with that, with the provision that the governance committee at some point in time would take a look at it. It's not my intent or Natalie's intent to bog this thing down. We just want to make sure that we have done our fiduciary responsibility, and like I said, once the check for $10 has been issued, you can correct it next time around, but maybe you could have corrected it on the front end. So I'm good with that.
And to be fair to what the comments you're making, it's not an all or nothing on these
No.
things. It doesn't need to be that it's either this way or operations are gonna be slowed to a halt. I mean, there's middle ground, there's different ways to do it.
Sure.
Like you said, cities have different ways, and so I think it's just something we give attention to. But, so I think what we're looking for then is a motion to approve the bank card signers as the CEO and the VP of operations, and if necessary, in one of their absence, the chair or vice chair.
Do we have any public comment for that?
I don't see that, no.
Okay, so I
So
second
moved.
that,
Oh.
yeah. Go ahead. Doug seconds.
Natalie moved, I second.
Okay, can we roll call the vote?
Question.
Chair Cervantes,
Yes,
Vice Chair Meyer,
Yes.
Director LaBelle,
Yes.
Director Pham,
Yes.
and Director Rubicava Garcia.
Yes.
Very good, thank you. It occurs to me that as we're adopting these various kinds of policies on an interim basis, we need to figure out a way to track them and put them in a binder. I know that our policy binder is really just the things that have been adopted on a regular basis, but like, for example, the thing you mentioned earlier about there being a process for vetting something, I don't know. If we can get these all printed somewhere, the text of the resolution, just so that we have a reference guide as to what it is the board currently has in effect, that'd be really helpful.
One more thing to add to your list, Summer.
I know. I feel like we've put so much work on all of you to this meeting. Okay, we're almost there. So let's look at item E. These are the board meeting dates and times. I think the memo speaks for itself. Just so we can explain the thinking that we used in
Yes.
recommending the particular dates for evening meetings, We've heard that feedback over the course of the past year. We really want to take it into account. We cannot commit to having every one of these meetings in the evening. It's simply not practical for several of us. But we do want to have important meetings held in the evening. And so we selected January because we haven't had an evening meeting with regard to the full board as long as I've been on it. And so we thought, let's do that as soon as we can. So we'll do January. Then the two that we thought were particularly important are June, which is the last meeting before the fair and before the board goes on what is typically its two-month hiatus. And then in October, which is the important meeting, the annual meeting at which officers are elected and all the annual business is conducted. We're not wed to those. Those are just kind of some information that went into how we selected these. I know we have a comment card, and also obviously board members, we welcome your feedback on particular dates and times.
What, do we have a time for the meeting? Oh, sorry, it's right in front of me. Telling you, I'm slow today.
And Reggie Mundicus.
I'm Reggie Mundicus. I'm speaking regarding the 2020 meeting schedule. Thank you for the evening meetings. It's a big improvement, and thank you for listening. One question is, how are the evening meetings going to be advertised? In addition to just being posted on the website, is there going to be like a note in one of the email blasts that goes out saying, hey, we're having an evening meeting. You may want to drop by and see us and give us your feedback. We can publicize it by word of mouth, but if there's some other larger ways which are more effective, but thank you for taking that step forward. Thank you.
That's a really great point. So we have to figure out for people who know the regular fourth Thursday, in the same way that we advertise that something's on the third Thursday instead of the fourth one. Let's figure out a good strategy on that. Very good comment.
Yeah, maybe we can publish the dates for the year as well, and then post it on the thing outside.
Yeah, that's true. On that public meeting webpage, we could put, here are the scheduled meetings, and then the agendas get posted as we get closer to the meeting. That's a thought. Yeah, so Michelle, can we leave that to you and Summer to sort out the strategy on?
Absolutely. I like the idea of doing just a little banner ad in our e-blast too, because that goes out to a huge database of people that may not be accessing our website on a regular basis. So we'll get the word out.
That's a great idea, Michelle.
We might also, on the agenda for a current meeting, if the next meeting is not going to be the regular fourth Thursday, put it, or time or whatever, put it in big red highlight or something so that people see.
Yeah, for the board members.
For us, who show up on the wrong date. I'm going to pass myself. Any other thoughts on the dates and times?
Yes, I have a couple comments. First of all, I want to be very transparent. I think I've been an advocate of that from day one. But I do have some concerns to just kind of arbitrarily say it'll be this and this and this. I think we ought to be specific when we get around to the infrastructure plan being completed. That would be a great meeting for an evening meeting where we want to get as much input as we can. The budget was a great meeting for doing that. There's obviously some costs associated. We've got a lot of staff sitting out here right now that are on the payroll 8 to 5. We start having evening meetings, then they're on the payroll from 8 until midnight or whatever the case may be. So without having an idea as to what we're looking at in terms of overall cost to the organization as well as the staff time that's going to be devoted, I would be reluctant to just arbitrarily say we're going to have 3 evening meetings on this date and this date and this date. So that's my thought on it.
What about just committing to 3 meetings and not specifically voting on the dates today?
So I wouldn't suggest that these would substitute for the workshop evening meeting. So the budget workshop was in addition to the monthly board meeting. We're going to have a governance committee workshop that's in the evening that is separate from the board meeting. So I agree with you when we're talking about important big projects where committees are working on them. I think it's important for the committees to schedule evening workshops when they reach important stages of their work.
We can do that for infrastructure, right, Ken?
The reason so a couple of reasons why, Doug, I'm proposing, or we're proposing these. for me personally, with a calendar that gets booked up very heavily, if I don't have some advance warning of when meetings are gonna take place, it's very difficult for me to commit to time. So I really would struggle on a 1 month's notice to be able to commit to having an evening meeting. So if we can view these kind of as placeholders, but with the caveat that potentially we can change them if we think that there is a heavy topic coming for a future meeting, or that we would, and that we continue to commit that the committees will organize public workshops on important topics. Is that something that you could become comfortable with, Doug?
Well, let's go ahead and take the vote. I just think to go ahead and do this without having a real assessment of what the cost to us from a staff standpoint is going to be, I don't know what it would be, but we've got a number of staff members here, but there would be some costs associated with it. Before I vote on it, obviously, I'm only one vote, but
Could you stagger times? Does somebody
Yes.
have to come in at 8 a.m.?
No, and for the most part, the folks that are representing the budget holders in this are salaried employees. So they would just stagger their time to be available. But thank you for watching out for that labor budget, Doug. I appreciate that. But we're open to doing whatever the board prefers. Staff stands ready to support that.
Well, I prefer not to have night meetings, but I will do it for the public. So just say, I mean.
Well, I feel like it's important that we show that we've taken that comment. I
Right,
mean, we've
yeah,
heard it
I
from
mean,
many
I'll-
meetings.
I'm fine
I don't
with
want
these
folks to think we've turned a deaf ear to it. We've heard it, and that's part of what went into our planning for the year as we were thinking through what's put on the
Well,
calendar.
I'm not turning a deaf ear to it, and I think those in the audience know that I'm very much an advocate for transparency and communication. Goodness knows I've attended enough night meetings in my life that probably doesn't compare with anybody else in this room. But I just feel that, well, those are my thoughts.
Okay, well, my thoughts are, since we're a state agency and our commitment is to the community, I think that it is important. Nothing's carved in stone with the changes that we've made. And there's always some amount of resistance that takes place. I really feel that for the transparency part that needs to continue to happen, that it is probably very important to have a few meetings in the evening. Now, this could very well change the following year, but I think it's very important for, for next year, for this to take place, and then we can evaluate for the following year. Nothing's carved in stone, but I think it's important, so I really believe that it is important that we continue to listen to our commitment to the community.
So, I think the message from what I hear what Doug is saying is he's not against the idea, he just wants more information before voting on it. Just understanding the costs surrounding it. I don't think it's necessarily something we need to vote on today. We can vote on it next month after we get an understanding of that. I think it will get approved, but I think he just wants more detail. And I'm okay with that too.
I agree, that is,
But I think Michelle did respond.
I was just going to say that, yes.
Not a lot of expenses affiliated with it. Because, I mean, I think the workshop was different, right? Because
Right.
staff actually had to stay and they were here working on all of the documents that we reviewed. But for a board meeting, staff doesn't necessarily have to stay unless they're reporting on a topic. So, I mean, I just think, I don't know if I want to prolong it because it's not really something, not substantive where it's going to impact a policy. It's just dates that we can get onto the calendar and change at a later time.
Well, I mean, the
That's
first
just my-
meeting's in January, why can't we just vote on it in December then? I mean,
Well, I don't think that we're talking about voting on a specific meeting. I think
no, I
that
mean,
what,
just in general, I mean, first meeting is the first month of the following year. We don't need to vote on it today, we can vote on it next month.
I'd like
It's
to
not
put it
gonna
in my
defer anything.
calendar.
exactly, I like to put it in my calendar as well. And I personally would love to have a save the date calendar for the entire year. I think it's just a good business practice, and it's a good way to also, other people that need to get it into their calendars.
If we postpone, what are we waiting for in December?
I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, really, just trying to be respectful. The costs are what they're gonna be. I don't expect it to be that significant, other than time, which is, I think everyone would prefer it not to be in the evening, but we'll do it if we, you know,
Well, and
I
I
think
guess
it's the
we would-
best interest.
We'd also just encourage, Michelle,
Oh.
let's try to limit, you know, to absolute minimum, non-exempt, you know, essential personnel if there are those who need to attend, so that we don't have significant incremental cost. But
Well, and respectful of their time too. I mean,
certainly, yeah.
so.
And we discussed this with Michelle in advance, so. I personally, I'll make a motion to approve this, and.
And I will second it.
Any further discussion? We'll call the vote, please.
Chair Cervantes,
Yes.
Vice Chair Meyer,
Yes.
Director LaBelle,
No?
Director Pham,
Yes.
and Director Rubicava Garcia.
Yes.
All right, we are now down to the profit and loss statement, Michelle.
Yes, okay, so, we continue to refine this process year over year to be more exact in our calculations for just what does the fair cost, and it's quite a process because, several of our departments are very intermingled between non-fair and fair-related activities throughout the year. But we get better at it each year. In addition, the committee asked if we could use the same formula that we're using for the 2019 fair P&L and project that for 2020. So the document that you all have includes our fair year-to-date as of the end of August, actual versus budget, and in the right-hand column, you'll see that same formula carried through for a projected fair P&L for 2020. So obviously, the first section of the P&L involves revenue, and there's several different revenue sources for the fair, not the least of which is our gate admissions, and then advance admissions. When someone buys a concert ticket, for example, there's fair admission built into that, so we realize that revenue as an advance sale. There's commercial space sales. Those are the merchants that rent space at the fair. There's obviously the commissions we earn on carnival and concessions. There are entry fees that people pay to enter into a juried competition at the fair. Cost for exhibit awards, the garden classes that we have. And then there's a whole lot of miscellaneous revenue, including parking and sponsorship, livestock auction receipts, camping, exhibitor fees, etc. When you roll all of that up, the total revenue for the 2019 fair was $36.3 million against a budget of $36.4 million, so we're pretty close to projection. Then on the expense side, as you can imagine, there are lots of expenses involved in operating the fair, not the least of which is payroll, professional services. Those are all the contracted services that work with us during the fair. Insurance, telephone and postage, all of the supplies that go into the fair, not only office supplies, but signs and banners, decor, software, farm equipment, etc. And then there are the utility-related costs of keeping up the buildings and the grounds. And then all the publicity, the advertising that we do, the brochure printing and PR-related expenses. There are the attractions expenses, so the cost of purchasing booking the talent and the major acts and the acts that play in the action sports arena and the hangar. The costs for the junior livestock auction. You'll notice under the competition handbook, there were no actual costs this year, but projected costs in 2020 of over $30,000. That's because we have to reprint that competition handbook, which needs to be reprinted. Cash premiums, trophies, ribbons, etc. And then there are all the other operating expenses that's listed. So we budgeted for $24.366 million. in expenses, and we're coming in at 24.475. So net proceeds before the overhead allocation for the 2019 fair is estimated at 11.8 million. Our best estimate at this point, and we won't know until the end of the year, but our best estimate for the overhead allocation will be somewhere between $7.5 and $8.5 million. So there you have the fair P&L.
So what do you think the increase is from? Or, because the overall estimate is higher than what we, or the actual is higher than what we estimated?
Actual net proceeds
Yeah.
higher. Little more revenue in ticket sales, in concert ticket sales as well.
Because attendance was down, right, slightly?
Yeah, just pretty flat, actually,
Paid.
year over year.
When you look at paid,
Yeah.
that's good.
Good. That's, I'm not arguing with it.
Yes.
I just like to know, like, where do we get,
Yes.
where is the increase coming from? So good.
Yeah. And again, we budgeted in 2020, we budgeted for flat revenue and really only necessary increases in expenses, mainly related to payroll. So that gives you a good snapshot of how we did during the fair, and I think it also puts it in perspective of how important the fair is to our total operation as well.
Very important.
Yes.
Just to be clear, there's no allocated overhead.
There is no allocated overhead, yeah. Yeah, when we first started doing the fair P&L, we just used to do a, kind of an overall blanket 80-20 overhead allocation. We're now beginning to look department by department and really trying to pull out how much time is spent on fair-related activities versus fair-related activities, and that fluctuates from department to department. Some are very fair-heavy, some are very year-round heavy. So we expect to be able to continue to refine this process year over year and, find more exact numbers.
Michelle, I feel for the earlier discussion we were having about projecting the potential impact of, say, a parking increase or a gate increase or increase in administrative fee or whatever those things are, this would be a really great format to use because it really drills into the lines that we can
Yes.
see where it hits it.
Yeah.
So that might be a way
Bring
to present
back this
some-
format. That's a
showing
great
those pro
suggestion.
formas.
Yep, very good.
Do you have a comment card? Any other board comments? Reggie Mundicus, please.
Withdrawn.
Okay, thank you. Then, if there's no other comments, thank you, Michelle.
And that was just an information item.
Very good. And our final open session item is the OC Fair theme for 2020.
I'm going to stand for this one, if you don't mind.
So my guess is Farmers Eat Donuts didn't make it.
I'm
to the
sorry,
top
Doug, we
row.
tried. I really rallied for you. I did, I promise, but maybe next
All I
year.
could do.
Maybe next year. So we are, as you know, for the 2019 fair, we finished a 3-year theme focus on agriculture. Agriculture and farming, the people that go into it, the food that's produced from it. So it's time to move on to a new 3-year theme, and we want to focus the next 3 years on community and what a great community asset the OC Fair is. So, if you will indulge us. Whoops, I'm missing a page. Hold on. Missing a page. Sorry. I'm missing. Oh, well. Here we go. Can you feel the excitement in the air? Just 198 days till the next OC Fair. They come for the farm, the rides and the games. All so different, yet all the same. Each unique in their own special way, here to have the most magical day. Some watch a concert, some come to eat. Some play with animals, most with 4 feet. This one is older. That one's a tot. He's just with one friend. They're with a lot. This one loves derbies. That one ice cream. She loves the paintings, but he loves to scream. A beautiful patchwork of people to see. That's what's called community. United under the OC sun, all together and all for fun. What do you think? Love it?
Did you write that poem yourself?
I'm not gonna say.
She absolutely did.
That was,
If you liked it, yes. If you didn't, if not, Ken
I think
wrote
you
it.
get a blue ribbon for it.
You could have gotten a
everybody
donut in there
likes it.
somewhere.
What's that? Oh, donuts?
You could have gotten a donut in there somewhere. you know.
I think there was a
Where
picture
was
of
the
a donut
hamburger?
somewhere.
The
Yeah,
donut hamburger.
that's right, the Krispy Kreme hamburger.
Your heart stops.
Excellent, very good.
It's adorable. I love the retro font.
Yeah, that is cute.
We plan to have a lot of fun with this All for Fun.
Okay, then that, if that's all, Michelle,
Yes.
was
that's
more
all
than
we've
enough. It
got.
was very
Yes.
good. Then we will retire to another closed session and return thereafter. We are resuming. We have nothing to report from the closed session. And our final item is Board of Directors Matters of Information. Director Pham, can we start with you?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Director LaBelle.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
Well, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and have an amazing, amazing holiday.
And I myself have nothing other than thank you for all the hard work. I know a lot went into this meeting and the workshop, and so we thank all of you. And with that, our next meeting is December 12th. Note that that is the 3rd, not the 4th Thursday. And we will see you all then. Meeting adjourned.